Hi guys. Tonight we travel back to a time before cities, before kingdoms, before written history itself. A world where darkness was not peaceful, it was terrifying. Imagine this: the sun has disappeared behind the horizon. The cold begins to creep across the land. Strange sounds echo through the forest. And suddenly, the fire goes out. No warmth, no light, no protection. For early humans, losing fire at night may have meant facing the most dangerous hours imaginable. Predators lurked beyond the shadows, freezing winds swept through open plains, and fear itself became a powerful enemy. So what really would have happened if our ancestors lost their fire in the middle of the night? How would they survive until sunrise? And could a single extinguished flame change the future of humanity forever? Tonight, settle in, relax, and let your mind drift back hundreds of thousands of years to a dark and ancient world where one small spark meant the difference between life and death. Section 1. Tonight, you are about to step into a forgotten world long before civilization, where every night could be your last. The air smells of smoke, wet stone, and distant rain drifting across endless grasslands. Somewhere beyond the weak circle of firelight, unseen eyes already watch patiently through the dark. You do not know their shapes yet. You only hear the occasional crunch of dry earth beneath heavy paws. Above you, unfamiliar stars burn brightly over a silent prehistoric world, untouched by roads, cities, or walls. There is no locked door waiting nearby, no warm bed, no safe morning guaranteed. Only fire stands between your small human tribe and the enormous darkness surrounding it. And tonight, that protection is about to disappear. Before we step deeper into the darkness of tonight's story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more calming historical journeys. And while you settle in comfortably, tell me your location and local time in the comments below. Somewhere across the world, another listener may be drifting into sleep beside the very same story. Now dim the lights, and imagine yourself sitting beside a small prehistoric fire nearly 50,000 years ago. The flames crackle softly against the cold evening wind. Smoke curls upward through black branches overhead, carrying the sharp scent of burning pine resin. Your legs ache from walking across rocky plains all day, hunting small animals that mostly escaped faster than expected. Honestly, prehistoric hunting looks much easier in museum paintings. Real hunting mostly involves missing repeatedly and pretending that was part of the plan. Around you, several tribe members settle onto animal hides, spread across packed earth. Their faces glow orange beneath dancing firelight. One old woman quietly rubs smooth stones together while humming under her breath. A child nearby chews dried roots with the determined seriousness of a tiny philosopher. Someone coughs softly. Someone laughs once. Then silence returns. The darkness beyond camp stretches endlessly across the ancient valley. Tall grass bends gently beneath the wind, producing a soft whispering sound that never completely stops. Far away, you hear something howl. Not close enough to panic, close enough to notice. You pull a rough animal skin tighter across your shoulders and lean closer to the warmth. Fire feels alive tonight. The flames sway and breathe like small glowing creatures feeding upon branches collected before sunset. Tiny sparks rise into the night sky before disappearing among the stars. For early humans, fire meant almost everything. Warmth during brutal cold seasons, protection against predators, cooked food that became easier to digest, long evenings where language slowly evolved beside glowing embers. Anthropologists generally agree that controlled fire changed human development dramatically, though researchers still debate exactly when daily fire use became reliable across different regions. Some evidence suggests ancient humans mastered consistent fire surprisingly late. Others argue small groups guarded precious flames much earlier than once believed. Either way, losing fire at night remained terrifying, especially out here. A sudden gust of wind brushes across the camp. The flames bend low for several seconds. Ash swirls upward into your face, carrying the bitter smell of charred wood. One hunter glances nervously toward the dark horizon. Nobody speaks immediately. The fire shrinks slightly. You hear the old woman mutter something under her breath. Perhaps a warning. Perhaps a prayer. In prehistoric nights, those often sounded identical. Another gust arrives, this time stronger. The flames flicker violently, twisting sideways beneath the cold wind, sweeping across open land. Dry branches collapse inward with a soft hiss of sparks. Smoke bursts low against the ground. Someone quickly reaches for more wood. Too late. The fire suddenly dims. Orange fades into red. Red fades into dull gray. And then the final flame disappears completely. No one moves. For several seconds, the entire tribe simply stares at the smoking ashes. You hear only wind. The warmth vanishes almost immediately. That surprises you most. Fire never feels temporary while it burns. Yet the moment it dies, cold creeps across your skin with shocking speed. A child whimpers softly nearby. The darkness changes too. Before night remained outside the firelight like an ocean surrounding a small island. Now the darkness sits directly beside you. Thick, heavy, endless. Your eyes struggle uselessly against it. Some historians believe prehistoric humans feared darkness far more intensely than modern people can imagine. Artificial light changed human psychology completely. Today, darkness usually means inconvenience. Back then, darkness often meant death. A branch cracks somewhere beyond camp. Everyone hears it. You feel your heartbeat quicken. Another sound follows. Slow movement through tall grass. Careful footsteps, circling. Predators already noticed. Large carnivores avoided healthy flames whenever possible. Archaeological sites show evidence suggesting lions, hyenas, and wolves frequently scavenged near human camps. Without fire, small human groups suddenly became vulnerable again. Just upright mammals with poor night vision and nervous breathing. Wonderful design choice, honestly. The old woman kneels beside the ashes and reaches forward carefully. Her wrinkled fingers search beneath smoking wood fragments. Others immediately join her, pushing through gray dust desperately. You kneel too. The ashes feel warm against your fingertips. Beneath the powdery surface, tiny pockets of heat still survive. Hope rises briefly inside your chest, then fades again. No ember, no glow, only dying warmth. A young hunter curses softly through clenched teeth. Another tribe member begins rubbing two sticks together rapidly, though exhaustion makes the movements clumsy. Early friction fire methods required patient skill and extremely dry material. Success was never guaranteed, especially during cold, windy nights. Tonight feels unforgiving. Wind brushes across your face again, carrying unfamiliar smells through darkness. Damp earth, wet fur, animal musk. Closer now. The child chewing roots earlier begins crying quietly against his mother's shoulder. She rocks him gently while staring into the black distance surrounding camp. Nobody tells stories anymore. Nobody laughs. Even breathing sounds loud. You glance upward. The stars appear impossibly bright without firelight below them. Ancient humans often viewed the night sky with extraordinary familiarity. Some researchers suspect constellations and oral myths developed partly because long, fire-lit evenings encouraged storytelling beneath open skies. But tonight nobody studies stars. Tonight everyone studies shadows. A low growl rolls across the valley. Not distant this time, very near. You hear grass shifting slowly beyond camp. Something large circles, carefully testing human fear, the way water tests weak stone. Another growl answers from farther away. Hyenas, perhaps, or wolves, possibly something worse. Historians still argue how frequently prehistoric humans actually suffered nighttime predator attacks. because bones rarely preserve clear evidence. Yet ancient campsites repeatedly show careful fire placement near sleeping areas, suggesting humans deeply understood the danger. And now you understand too. Cold air settles heavily across your skin. Your hands shake slightly, while searching uselessly through dead ashes once more. Tiny streaks of soot cling beneath your fingernails. The smell of smoke lingers everywhere, though no flames remain. Then the old woman suddenly freezes. Her fingers stop moving beneath the ash pile. Very carefully, she lifts something small from the darkness. A single faint red glow pulses weakly inside gray dust, one surviving ember. Tiny as a beetle's eye, but alive. Nobody breathes. Section 2. The ember glows faintly inside the old woman's trembling hands. You lean closer instinctively, careful not to breathe too hard against it. The tiny red spark pulses beneath gray ash, like a heartbeat struggling to continue. Around you, every member of the tribe watches silently. Even the crying child becomes quiet again. The night itself seems to pause. The old woman slowly lowers the ember into a shallow nest of dried grass and shredded bark. Her movements remain steady despite the cold shaking her fingers. Smoke rises immediately thin and pale against the darkness. No flame yet, only smoke. But smoke means possibility. You kneel beside her while another hunter carefully shields the ember from wind, using both hands. His palms look cracked and rough beneath faint starlight. Smoke curls around his wrists, carrying the earthy scent of burned wood and bitter moss. The tribe waits. Nobody dares speak loudly. Somewhere beyond camp, a hyena laughs. The sound cuts through the valley, sharply bouncing between distant stones like cruel amusement. You hear another answer farther away. Then another. They know your fire vanished. Modern researchers studying predator behavior believe large carnivores quickly recognize weakness injury or vulnerability within nearby groups. Ancient humans likely understood those signals too, though in far more personal ways. Out here, your weakness has a smell, and tonight your tribe smells frightened. The ember dims slightly. The old woman adds another pinch of dry material, carefully feeding the fragile glow with practiced patience. Historians still debate whether certain prehistoric groups assigned special spiritual importance to firekeepers. Though many anthropologists suspect, experienced elders often controlled communal flames because survival depended heavily upon consistency. You understand why now. One careless movement could end everything. A cold wind sweeps across camp again. The hunter shielding the ember tightens his posture immediately. Everyone else turns their backs against the gust, instinctively forming a wall around the dying spark. Your shoulders ache from tension. The smoke thickens briefly, then disappears. The ember weakens further. A nervous murmur spreads through the tribe. Someone begins gathering more bark quickly, while another searches nearby bundles for dry moss stored earlier. You hear frustration rising beneath their whispers. Fear, too. A young woman suddenly grabs your arm. "Listen," she whispers. At first you hear nothing unusual, only grass moving softly beneath the wind. Then, slowly, another sound emerges beneath it. Low breathing. Close, very close. You stare into darkness beyond camp, straining your eyes uselessly. Moonlight barely reaches the valley floor tonight. Tall grass sways gently in silver patches, revealing nothing clearly. Then two pale eyes appear briefly, watching, motionless. Your stomach tightens. The creature remains half hidden behind grass, several paces away. You cannot identify its exact shape yet, though broad shoulders rise above the vegetation. Another pair of eyes appears farther left, moments later. The predators move carefully, testing distance, calculating risk. Large Ice Age carnivores often investigated human camps cautiously, especially after fire disappeared. Cave hyenas, for example, grew considerably larger than many modern relatives. Some possessed bone-crushing jaws, capable of terrifying force. Early humans respected them deeply. Honestly, you would too. The old woman suddenly blows gently across the ember. Smoke rises again. A tiny orange thread flickers upward for half a second, before vanishing immediately. Hope hurts sometimes. The child beside his mother begins whimpering again. She covers his mouth softly against her shoulder, while rocking slowly back and forth. Fear spreads fastest through silence. The hunter nearest you grips a sharpened spear, tightly enough for his knuckles to pale beneath fireless darkness. Flint spear points glimmer faintly beneath the stars. Effective weapons during daylight. Much less comforting now. A strange smell drifts through camp suddenly. Wet fur, rotting meat, animal breath. The predators moved closer. You hear soft footsteps circling beyond sight. Grass bends carefully under heavy bodies. One creature exhales loudly through its nose. Another sniffs the cold air. Your own breathing feels embarrassingly loud. The ember shrinks again. The old woman closes her eyes briefly. Her lips move silently while rubbing dry fibers between soot-covered fingers. Perhaps she remembers older winters. Perhaps nights exactly like this one. Some anthropologists suggest prehistoric oral traditions may have preserved survival lessons through stories told beside fires. Knowledge about weather predators, migration routes, and dangerous mistakes likely passed between generations, long before writing existed. Tonight, one lesson feels very clear. Never sleep beside dead ashes. The old woman suddenly motions toward you. You lean closer immediately. She presses a bundle of dried grass into your hands and points toward the ember. Understanding arrives slowly. You kneel carefully, lowering the fibers closer while shielding them from wind. Your hands tremble, not from cold alone. Smoke brushes against your face, stinging your eyes gently. The smell feels thick and strangely comforting, despite everything surrounding camp. You lower your head closer still. Then you notice something strange. The predator stopped moving. The valley becomes silent again. Too silent. Even insects seem absent now. A hunter beside you slowly turns toward the darkness. His breathing grows shallow. Without warning, he lifts his spear toward the grass beyond camp. You follow his stare. A massive shape stands there, still, watching. Moonlight finally catches its outline faintly. Broad shoulders, thick neck, heavy head hanging low between powerful limbs. Not a hyena, much larger, possibly a cave lion. The animal does not growl. It does not charge. That almost feels worse somehow. Calm predators appear frighteningly confident. The lion simply watches your small, frightened tribe gathered around dead ashes, waiting, judging. You smell its musky scent beneath the wind now. Sharp, wild, ancient. Nobody moves. The old woman suddenly presses your hands lower. The ember touches the grass bundle. For one terrible second, nothing happens. Then thin smoke rises rapidly through the fibers. A tiny orange glow spreads outward. The old woman blows softly again. The grass ignites. A small, fragile flame appears. The tribe gasps together. Not large, not safe yet, but alive. The cave lion blinks once against the sudden light. Its massive silhouette remains motionless several seconds longer, while the hunters raise spears carefully. The little flame crackles weakly between your hands, barely larger than a leaf. Still enough. The lion finally steps backward into darkness. Slowly, silently, the grass swallows its shape almost immediately. Only moving shadows remain beyond camp now. Distantly, you hear another hyena call, echoing across stone ridges. The tribe exhales together. Not relief exactly, more like borrowed time. People rush quickly for wood bundles stacked near sleeping hides. Dry branches snap loudly, while hands feed the tiny flame with desperate care. Smoke thickens upward once more, carrying sparks toward the stars. The fire slowly begins growing again. Orange light spreads across tired faces. Warmth returns little by little. You never realized warmth could feel emotional before tonight. One young hunter laughs suddenly from pure exhaustion. Another collapses backward onto the ground, staring upward, with wet eyes reflecting firelight. The child finally falls asleep against his mother's shoulder, while flames strengthen nearby. But nobody fully relaxes. Not yet, because beyond the growing firelight, the darkness still waits patiently. And somewhere out there, hungry eyes continue watching the flames return. Section 3. Morning never truly arrives all at once in this ancient world. Instead, darkness loosens slowly. The stars begin fading above the valley, while cold gray light spreads across distant grasslands. Your fire still burns weakly at the center of camp, snapping softly beneath fresh branches gathered before dawn. Thin smoke drifts upward into pale skies, carrying the sharp smell of resin and damp bark. Nobody slept deeply. Most of the tribe remained half awake through the long night, listening for movement beyond the firelight. Even now, exhausted eyes scan the horizon cautiously. Fear lingers after darkness leaves. Sometimes longer. You sit near the flames, rubbing warmth back into stiff fingers. Ash coats your hands completely, collecting beneath cracked fingernails and across your wrists. Nearby hunters inspect spear points silently, while children sleep tangled inside heavy animal hides. The old woman watches the fire carefully, always the fire. Her face looks older beneath daylight. Deep lines cut across her cheeks like dried riverbeds. Smoke clings permanently to her tangled gray hair. One eye remains clouded white from some forgotten injury long ago. Still, everyone listens when she speaks, and this morning she finally does. There was a winter, she says quietly, when fire disappeared for 12 nights. The tribe becomes still immediately. Even the hunters stop working. You lean closer beside the flames, while the old woman feeds another branch into the glowing coals. The wood crackles sharply. Tiny sparks float upward between drifting smoke. Nobody hunted far. She continues. Nobody slept well. We carried children beneath skins because cold reached their bones too quickly. The youngest listeners stare wide-eyed beside the fire. You notice one boy unconsciously touching the flame's warmth with open palms, reassuring himself they remain alive. Anthropologists believe storytelling around communal fires helped early humans strengthen social bonds and preserve survival knowledge. Long before written language existed, memory depended entirely upon spoken voices repeated across generations, and frightening stories survived best. The old woman gazes toward distant hills while speaking. One night the snow came early. Wolves followed us for days. She pauses briefly. We lost 3 people before finding another flame. Nobody interrupts. The fire pops softly between her words. Historians still debate how prehistoric groups replaced lost fire before reliable ignition methods spread widely. Some researchers suspect ancient humans often preserved natural flames continuously rather than creating entirely new ones. Others argue primitive friction techniques appeared earlier than previously believed. Either way, protecting fire demanded constant attention, especially during cold seasons. You glance toward the surrounding valley. Morning mist drifts low across tall grass, turning distant shapes blurry and uncertain. The world smells wet after the freezing night. Somewhere nearby, birds begin calling cautiously from hidden branches. Yet tension remains everywhere, because everyone remembers the eyes watching from darkness only hours earlier. A hunter suddenly stands near the edge of camp. Tracks. You rise immediately alongside several others. Damp soil beyond camp now reveals clear impressions pressed deeply into the earth overnight. Massive paw prints circle the outer edge of sleeping areas before disappearing toward rocky slopes eastward. The cave lion stayed nearby for hours. Its tracks appear enormous beneath morning light. One child refuses to approach them. Another stares with fascinated horror while gripping his mother's hand tightly. The hunters exchange uneasy looks beside the prints. A younger man spits into the grass. Too bold, he mutters. He is probably right. Large predators usually avoided healthy human groups carrying strong fire. Yet hungry animals sometimes became dangerously confident during harsh seasons. Fossil evidence suggests Ice Age ecosystems supported astonishingly large carnivores competing constantly for territory and food. Human beings survived there somehow. Barely sometime. You crouch near one paw print carefully. Rainwater collects inside its edges, while flies buzz softly nearby. The impression looks wider than your open hand. The animal could have entered camp easily. That thought settles unpleasantly inside your stomach. The old woman walks beside the tracks, slowly, before kneeling stiffly against the cold ground. She studies the impression several moments without speaking. Then she touches the soil lightly. It was old, she murmurs. Nobody understands immediately. She points farther toward the valley edge. Heavy movement. Slow steps. Hungry. You study the tracks again. She may be right. The prints drag slightly across softer earth. One rear paw pressed unevenly deeper than others. And are injured even, possibly desperate. That feels worse somehow. Animals weakened by age or injury often became more unpredictable hunters. Historians, examining prehistoric human remains, occasionally find evidence of predator attacks, though scholars continue debating how common those encounters truly were. Ancient survival rarely offered clear answers, only clues buried beneath time. The hunters decide quickly afterward. More wood must be collected immediately. No arguments follow. Several people gather carrying woven sling and stone tools, while smoke rises steadily behind them. You join the group reluctantly, though staying behind feels equally unsettling. The fire looks painfully small once you leave camp. Morning air bites against your skin as the tribe moves into nearby woodland. Frost still clings beneath shaded bushes. Damp earth squishes softly beneath worn animal hide footwear. Every snapped twig sounds louder than expected. Nobody wanders far from one another. The forest smells rich and heavy compared with open plains outside camp. Wet leaves cover the ground beneath towering pines, while pale sunlight filters weakly through thick branches overhead. Somewhere above, unseen birds flutter between trees, scattering droplets onto your shoulders. Beautiful and deeply uncomfortable. Early humans likely gathered enormous amounts of fuel daily, just maintaining communal fires. Experimental archaeologists estimate prehistoric camps consumed surprising quantities of wood, especially during colder climates. Fire demanded feeding constantly, like another hungry tribe member. A young woman beside you suddenly freezes mid-step. Everyone stops instantly. You hear it moments later. Breathing. Close again. The sound drifts faintly between trees somewhere ahead. Slow inhalation. Slow exhalation. Heavy lungs hidden within darkness beneath the branches. The hunters lower their spears carefully. Nobody speaks. You smell damp fur almost immediately afterward. Then silence returns. Only dripping water remains. The group stands motionless several seconds longer before cautiously backing away together toward brighter ground. Nobody suggests investigating further. Prehistoric bravery usually had limits. Very reasonable limits. Back at camp, smoke still rises safely into the pale sky. Relief spreads visibly across tired faces once the fire comes into view again. Several tribe members immediately kneel beside the flames, feeding fresh branches into glowing coals with almost religious care. The old woman watches quietly. Then she says something strange. Fire remembers. You glance toward her uncertainly. She pokes the burning wood gently, using a blackened stick. If you protect it, it protects you. Simple words, yet everyone listens carefully. Some researchers believe early humans may have viewed fire as something alive or spiritual long before organized religion formed. Watching flames move, consume, breathe, and die naturally inspired powerful emotions. Honestly, sitting here now, you understand completely. The fire crackles warmly against the cold morning air, while smoke drifts upward into brightening skies. Around it, the tribe slowly relaxes again. Children wake. Hunters eat dried meat. Someone begins softly humming an old rhythm beside the flames. But you notice something troubling. The old woman keeps staring eastward, toward the rocky hills where the lion disappeared. as if she knows the night will return, and next time the darkness may come closer still. Section 4. The second night arrives colder than the first. Clouds swallow most of the stars before sunset, turning the sky heavy and colorless above the valley. Wind slides constantly across open grasslands, now carrying the smell of approaching rain mixed with distant animal musk. Your tribe works quietly beside the fire, stacking wood higher than usual. Nobody wants another disaster, especially after discovering the lion tracks that morning. The hunters returned before dusk, carrying only a small hare and several bitter roots. Not enough food for comfort. Barely enough for calm conversation. Hunger sharpens fear in strange ways. Even laughter sounds thinner tonight. You sit beside the flames, sharpening a stone blade carefully against rough granite. The repetitive scraping feels strangely soothing. Nearby, children gather close together beneath heavy hides, while older tribe members prepare sleeping places around the fire's edge. Everything tonight revolves around the fire. Every glance, every movement, every breath. Anthropologists studying prehistoric campsites often notice fire positioned carefully near sleeping areas, tool-making spaces, and food preparation zones. Flames shaped the rhythm of ancient human evenings completely. Without fire, darkness ended most activity immediately. With fire, humans stayed awake longer, talked longer, remembered longer. The old woman crouches near the flames, feeding thin branches into glowing coals one at a time. She never leaves the fire unattended now, not even briefly. Smoke drifts across her face while orange light dances inside her cloudy eye. A chunt approaches her carefully. Will the lion come back? The question hangs quietly over camp. The old woman does not answer immediately. Instead, she studies the fire, while sparks rise upward into gathering darkness. Everything returns eventually, she says softly. Very comforting. You pull your animal skin tighter around your shoulders, while cold wind brushes through camp again. The air feels wetter tonight. Rain may arrive before midnight. Several tribe members glance nervously toward the sky. Rain complicates everything. Wet wood burns poorly. Damp grass refuses sparks. Friction fire becomes painfully difficult. Historians still debate exactly how prehistoric groups protected embers during long storms. Though some evidence suggests people carried coals inside bark containers, shells, or specially prepared bundles. Losing fire during rain could become catastrophic. A young hunter named Karu stands abruptly beside the flames. We need more wood, he says. Nobody argues. The existing pile already looks large beside camp. Yet fear changes people's judgment quickly. Soon, several hunters rise reluctantly, gripping spears, before heading toward nearby woodland once more. You go with them, The valley darkens rapidly as evening deepens around you. Gray clouds stretch low overhead, while distant thunder mutters somewhere beyond the hills. The forest ahead appears almost black beneath thick branches. Karu leads silently. His posture stays tense the entire walk. Twigs snap beneath your feet, while damp leaves cling against worn hide wrappings around your ankles. The smell of wet earth grows stronger deeper among the trees. Somewhere nearby, water drips steadily from branches overhead. Nobody speaks loudly anymore during these trips. The woods feel occupied. You notice strange marks scratched across one tree trunk, while gathering fallen branches nearby. 4 deep grooves cut vertically through pale bark, almost higher than your shoulders. Claw marks, fresh ones. The bark still smells sharp and raw beneath your fingertips. Karu notices immediately. His face tightens beneath fading light. Move faster, he whispers. Everyone obeys. Branches pile quickly into carrying slings, while darkness thickens between the trees. The storm approaches steadily now. Wind stirs the upper canopy with long, groaning sounds overhead. Then someone freezes. You hear it too. A low, rumbling growl drifts faintly through the forest, not distant, close enough for detail. Every hunter lifts their spear instantly. Your pulse quickens while you scan the trees uselessly. Shadows overlap everywhere beneath the branches. Wet leaves sway gently, though no animal appears. The growl comes again, longer this time. Karoo motions everyone backward slowly. Nobody resists. You retreat carefully through dripping undergrowth, carrying as much wood as possible, while fear presses heavily against your ribs. The forest suddenly feels enormous around your tiny group. Then a shape moves briefly between trees ahead. Massive shoulders, pale eyes, gone immediately. The cave lion follows you, not charging, not hiding either, simply walking nearby, studying. Some historians believe early humans occasionally lost dominance over certain hunting territories during periods of predator pressure or climate hardship. Human survival depended partly upon understanding when to fight, when to flee, and when to avoid dangerous areas entirely. Tonight feels like avoidance would be wise. Thunder rolls louder overhead. Rain begins moments later. Cold droplets strike leaves, first producing soft, rattling sounds across the canopy. Then, heavier rain crashes suddenly through the branches, soaking hair hides and wood bundles. Almost instantly, Karoo curses softly. Everyone breaks into hurried movement toward camp. Mud pulls against your feet, while rainwater streams down your face. Branches slap against your arms during the frantic return through darkening woodland. Lightning flickers briefly across distant hills, turning the entire forest white for half a heartbeat. And during that flash, you see the lion clearly, standing behind the trees, watching your retreat. Its fur hangs dark and wet beneath the storm. One shoulder appears scarred badly. The animal looks enormous in the lightning glow. Then darkness returns immediately. You keep moving. By the time camp finally appears through rain, everyone looks exhausted and drenched. Smoke struggles weakly above the fire, while tribe members scramble desperately to shield flames beneath overlapping hides and branches. The old woman shouts instructions sharply. Dry wood first, not too much. Protect the center. People rush toward the fire immediately, adding branches carefully beneath makeshift coverings. Steam rises everywhere, while rain hisses against outer coals. The flames shrink dangerously low beneath the storm. You kneel beside the fire, feeding smaller dry sticks into protected areas near the glowing center. Smoke burns your eyes painfully. Wet hair sticks across your forehead. The tribe surrounds the flames completely now, protecting them together. Thunder shakes the valley again. Children cry softly, while lightning flashes across dark hills beyond camp. Wind lashes rain sideways, through gaps between hides. The fire flickers violently against every gust. For one terrifying moment, the flames nearly vanish again. You hear panic spread instantly through the tribe, but the old woman remains calm. She pushes deeper coals together, carefully using a long branch. Beneath the collapsing ash, hidden orange light glows stronger suddenly. Flames rise again, slowly feeding upon protected dry wood near the center. The tribe exhales together. Relief feels physical. Outside the firelight, rain pours endlessly across the ancient valley. Darkness shifts constantly beneath the storm, while distant growls occasionally drift through the wind. The lion remains out there somewhere, waiting, but tonight, the fire serves barely. And as you stare into the struggling flames beside frightened, exhausted strangers, you begin understanding something early humans learned long ago. Fire is never truly owned, only borrowed. Section 5. Rain continues through most of the night. Not violent anymore, just steady, endless. Cold droplets fall from dark skies and strike the valley with soft, whispering sounds that never completely stop. Water drips from tree branches, slides through grass, pools beneath stones. Even the fire sounds tired now. You sit close beside the flames, while steam rises gently from drying animal hides stretched around camp. Smoke clings thickly to the damp air, carrying the sharp scent of soaked wood and burned bark. Every tribe member remains gathered unusually near the fire tonight. Nobody trusts the darkness anymore, especially after seeing the lion during the storm. The flames burn low, but stable glowing orange beneath careful layers of dry wood, protected inside a ring of stones. The old woman still watches constantly from nearby. She has not slept properly since the fire almost vanished. Neither has anyone else. Sleep comes differently in dangerous places, lightly, nervously, one ear always listening. A hunter beside you quietly tears strips from dried meat while staring toward the rain beyond camp. His jaw tightens constantly, as though chewing invisible thoughts. Across the fire, 2 children drift asleep against their mother beneath damp fur coverings. The youngest suddenly wakes crying, "Quiet!" The mother whispers immediately. Too late. The sound travels outward into darkness. Every adult in camp stiffens. Nothing happens at first, only rain. Then somewhere beyond the edge of firelight, you hear movement through wet grass, slow footsteps. Circling again, Carew rises instantly with spear in hand. Several hunters follow him silently. Firelight reflects across sharp stone points, while rain glitters faintly against their shoulders. The footsteps stop. You realize you have been holding your breath. Historians still debate how prehistoric humans organized nighttime defense during dangerous conditions. Some researchers suspect certain tribe members stayed awake in rotating groups, guarding fires and watching for predators, while others rested. Honestly, that system sounds exhausting. Necessary, but exhausting. The old woman suddenly reaches toward the flames, lifting one burning branch carefully from the fire's edge. Orange light dances across her face while sparks fall into wet earth around her feet. She hands the branch directly to Carew. Fire as weapon. Simple idea. Very persuasive. Carew moves several steps beyond camp, carrying the burning branch outward toward darkness. Smoke trails behind him, while rain hisses softly against the glowing wood. The other hunters remain close. For several long seconds, nothing changes. Then you hear a low growl, closer than expected. Carew thrusts the burning branch forward immediately. A massive shadow shifts backward through wet grass. The lion, even in darkness, its shape appears frighteningly large. Firelight catches pale fur briefly beneath the rain, before the animal retreats several paces farther into the valley. Not gone, only watching from farther away. Carew slowly backs toward camp again, while holding the burning branch outward. The lion disappears once more into darkness beyond sight. The hunters return quietly. Nobody celebrates. Predators driven by hunger rarely surrender quickly. The rain finally weakens near midnight. Clouds drift slowly apart overhead, revealing narrow stretches of stars above the valley once more. Cold air settles heavily across camp after the storm passes. And that is when the shouting begins. At first you think someone spotted the lion again, but the panic sounds different. Sharper, human. You turn quickly toward the sleeping hides near the fire. One child is missing. The mother stands barefoot beside empty coverings, breathing rapidly while searching the camp with terrified eyes. Her voice cracks while calling into darkness again and again. No answer comes. Every tribe member rises immediately. Fear spreads faster than flame. The missing boy cannot be older than 8 winters. Thin, quiet, usually clinging close beside the older women during travel. You remember him chewing roots beside the fire earlier yesterday. Now he is simply gone. Carew grabs a burning branch without hesitation. When did you see him last? The mother shakes her head helplessly. Sleeping. The old woman kneels beside the empty hide, touching damp earth carefully. Rain erased most tracks already. Only scattered footprints remain around camp. Too many. Too blurred. The hunters exchange grim looks. Children wandering beyond firelight at night rarely survived long alone. Cold alone could kill before dawn. Predators simply made the odds worse, but nobody says that aloud. Carew motions towards several hunters immediately. We search now. You rise alongside them before thinking carefully about the decision. Fear feels smaller while moving. Sitting beside uncertainty hurts worse somehow. Each hunter carries fire outward from camp. Burning branches sway against darkness, while smoke drifts through cold night air. The flames smell rich and strangely comforting away from camp, though their light reaches only a few paces across wet grass. The valley beyond appears enormous. You call the boy's name repeatedly while moving through tall grass, slick with rainwater. Wind brushes constantly against your face, carrying wet earth and animal scent from unseen places nearby. No answer, only distant dripping sounds. Ancient human groups probably faced devastating child mortality regularly through illness, exposure accidents, and predators. Archaeological evidence suggests small tribes depended heavily upon cooperation, because losing even one individual carried enormous emotional and practical consequences, especially children. The search spread slowly outward across the valley. Burning branches hiss softly in damp air, while hunters scan the ground desperately for signs. Mud sucks against your feet with every step. Grass brushes cold against your legs. Then someone shouts. You rush toward the sound immediately. Near a cluster of dark stones beside the valley edge, Carew kneels against the ground, studying fresh tracks beneath flickering firelight. Small human footprints leading toward the forest. Beside them, larger tracks press deeply into wet soil. Not lion tracks this time. Hyenas. Several. The hunters become silent. You stare toward the black forest ahead, where dripping branches sway beneath weak starlight. The child entered there recently, perhaps frightened, perhaps confused after waking alone during the storm, perhaps chased. Nobody knows. Historians still argue how often prehistoric humans actively rescued tribe members during dangerous situations versus abandoning hopeless searches to protect the larger group. Survival sometimes demanded brutal decisions. Tonight, nobody wants to make one. Carew lifts his burning branch higher. We keep moving. The hunters follow him reluctantly toward the trees. Behind you, far across the valley, the campfire glows faintly against darkness, like a tiny fallen star, struggling not to disappear. And somewhere ahead, inside the dripping forest, something suddenly laughs. High, sharp, hyena laughter. Very close. Section 6. The hyena laughter echoes through the forest again. Short, sharp, almost human. Cold air tightens inside your chest, while the hunters stop moving instinctively beneath dripping branches. Firelight trembles across wet tree trunks, casting strange, twisting shadows over the forest floor. Rainwater still falls occasionally from leaves overhead, tapping softly against stone and mud. Nobody speaks. The sound came close, too close. Carew slowly lowers his spear forward, while lifting the burning branch higher with his other hand. Orange light spreads unevenly through the trees, revealing tangled roots, slick rocks, and pale mist drifting low across the ground. Nothing else. Yet the feeling of being watched grows stronger. Hyenas once occupied prehistoric ecosystems across Africa, Europe, and Asia in astonishing numbers. Some Ice Age species reached enormous sizes compared with modern relatives. Archaeologists studying ancient caves sometimes discover signs that humans and hyenas fought repeatedly over shelter and food sources. Honestly, sharing caves with giant laughing scavengers sounds deeply unpleasant. Another laugh erupts deeper in the woods, then another answers farther away. The hunters tighten together immediately. You suddenly understand the strategy. The sounds move deliberately around your group, circling, testing. Carew motions everyone forward again, slowly now, carefully. The forest smells thick with wet bark and rotting leaves. Smoke from the burning branches drifts constantly into your face, stinging your eyes while masking other scents. Somewhere nearby, insects buzz softly beneath the darkness. Then you hear something else. Crying. Faint. Human. The missing boy. The sound comes from ahead, somewhere beyond a cluster of fallen trees. Fear flashes visibly across every hunter's face. Relief, too. Alive. At least for now. Carew pushes forward faster through the undergrowth. Branches scrape against your arms while mud pulls heavily at your feet. The crying grows louder between the trees, then suddenly stops. Silence crashes down again. You freeze. Every instinct screams now. The hunters spread wider carefully while raising spears towards surrounding shadows. Firelight flickers violently against wet trunks. Your pulse pounds painfully inside your ears. Nothing moves. No sound comes. Only dripping water. Then you see the eyes, several pairs, low to the ground, surrounding you. Hyenas. Their pale eyes reflect orange firelight from every direction between the trees. Broad shoulders shift slowly through darkness, while wet fur glistens faintly beneath the flames. One animal steps forward enough for you to finally see its shape clearly. Large, much larger than expected. Its jaw hangs slightly open, while thick neck muscles ripple beneath spotted fur. Steam rises softly from its breathing in the cold night air. Another hyena appears beside it, then another. The hunters instinctively move closer together. Fire still matters, even here. Large predators often hesitated before approaching coordinated humans carrying flames. Researchers studying prehistoric hunting patterns suspect early fire use dramatically altered relationships between humans and carnivores across ancient landscapes. Tonight, though, hesitation feels dangerously thin. The crying suddenly returns again. Closer now. You turn sharply toward the sound. The missing boy crouches beneath an overturned tree several paces away, curled tightly against exposed roots. Mud covers his legs completely. His wide, terrified eyes reflect firelight, while tears streak across his face. A hyena stands between him and your group, not attacking, guarding. Karu shouts loudly and thrusts his burning branch forward. The hyena flinches immediately, snarling deep in its throat, while backing several steps away from the flame. The hunters surge forward together at once, spears raised high. The animal retreats farther into darkness, but not far. The others remain surrounding the clearing, watching, waiting. You rush toward the boy while another hunter grabs his arm quickly. The child trembles violently beneath soaked animal hides wrapped around his shoulders. His skin feels freezing beneath your hands. What happened? Someone asks. The boy struggles to answer through chattering teeth. I woke up, he whispers. Thought everyone left. Fear squeezes unexpectedly inside your chest. Children in prehistoric camps likely depended completely upon firelight for orientation during darkness. Once flames dimmed or confusion spread, even familiar surroundings could become terrifyingly disorienting. The hunters lift the boy carefully between them. Move, Karu orders. Nobody argues. The return through the forest feels longer somehow. Hyenas continue following nearby beyond the reach of firelight, their footsteps occasionally crunching softly through wet leaves beside your group. Once you hear heavy breathing directly behind you, before Karu swings the burning branch sharply toward darkness. A snarling shape vanishes immediately. The animals remain cautious, but persistent. The forest finally begins thinning ahead. Relief spreads visibly across the hunters, once faint campfire glow appears between distant trees. Smoke rises gently into the cold sky beyond the valley edge. Home, or something close enough. Then the laughter changes. No longer playful. Aggressive now. You hear rapid movement crashing through brush behind the group. Several hyenas rush forward suddenly from darkness, at once emboldened perhaps by hunger or desperation. Everything happens quickly afterward. Hunters shout. Spears thrust outward. Burning branches swing wildly through darkness, spraying sparks across wet leaves. One hyena lunges frighteningly close beside you before recoiling sharply from firelight. Its smell hits instantly. Wet fur. Blood. Rotting meat. Ancient. Another animal snaps toward Karu's leg, but retreats when a spear strikes the ground inches from its face. The clearing explodes with growls, smoke mud, and flickering orange light. Then the old woman's words return suddenly inside your mind. Fire remembers. You grab a burning branch fallen beside your feet and thrust it directly toward the nearest hyena. Sparks burst against its muzzle, while flames roar brighter from sudden movement. The animal yelps sharply and backs away. The others hesitate immediately afterward, only briefly, but enough. Karoo shouts for everyone to keep moving. The hunters retreat together while holding fire outward in every direction. Hyenas continue pacing nearby through darkness, though none charge again immediately. The campfire grows larger ahead, closer, safer. Finally, the tribe bursts from the forest edge back into camp, where frightened faces rush forward instantly. The missing boy collapses sobbing into his mother's arms, while exhausted hunters stumble toward the flames. Nobody speaks several moments. Everyone simply stares into the fire, breathing hard, alive. Beyond camp, the hyenas stop near the valley edge, watching silently from darkness once more. Their eyes glow faintly against the night before slowly disappearing one pair at a time. The tribe survived again, barely. And as you sit beside the fire, listening to the boy cry softly against his mother's shoulder, one realization settles quietly inside your mind. Out here, the darkness never stops hunting. Section 7. The fire burns brighter after the hyena attack. Not because the wood changed, because the people did. Every branch placed onto the flames now carries urgency. Every glowing ember receives careful attention. Nobody drifts far from camp anymore, not even briefly. The valley beyond the firelight feels alive with patient hunger. And tonight, the darkness smells different, sharper somehow. Animal musk drifts constantly through the cold air surrounding camp. Wind carries it across the grasslands in slow, invisible waves. Wet fur, old blood, mud. The scent lingers beneath the smoke like a warning refusing to leave. You sit beside the fire, rubbing sore hands together, while dawn slowly approaches behind thick clouds. Sleep never arrived after returning from the forest. The missing boy now rests beside his mother, wrapped tightly inside several hides, though occasional trembling still shakes his small shoulders. The hunters remain awake too. Karoo crouches near the edge of camp, sharpening his spear point carefully against stone. Scrape. Pause. Scrape again. The steady sound blends with crackling firewood and distant wind across the plains. Nobody jokes anymore. Fear has weight now. Real weight. Some anthropologists believe prehistoric humans developed unusually strong group awareness because survival depended heavily upon cooperation during dangerous conditions. Modern humans still carry traces of those instincts today. Crowded elevators feel uncomfortable. Dark, empty streets trigger unease. Your ancient nervous system remembers things, even after thousands of years. The old woman suddenly rises stiffly from beside the flames. Without speaking, she walks slowly toward the valley edge, carrying a burning branch. Several hunters tense immediately, expecting danger again. But she simply kneels beside damp earth beyond camp and studies something near the grass. You follow cautiously. Tracks. Dozens this time. Hyena prints circle the camp clearly beneath soft mud left by the rainstorm. Some approach frighteningly close to sleeping areas before turning away again. One set leads directly toward the place where the missing boy disappeared during the night. They waited, watching the camp, watching all of you. The realization spreads uneasily through the tribe once others gather nearby. Children cling closer beside parents while hunters stare silently toward the open plains. Karoo spits into the mud again. Too many, he mutters. He is right. Large predator populations likely pressured prehistoric human migration constantly, especially during harsh climates, when food became scarce. Some historians suspect humans often abandoned camps entirely after repeated predator encounters. But moving carried risks too. Unknown territory, unknown water, unknown hunters waiting elsewhere. You return beside the fire while pale morning light slowly reaches across the valley. The sky remains heavy and gray above distant hills. No birds sing today. Even the landscape feels cautious somehow. A young woman begins distributing small portions of dried meat and roasted roots among the tribe. Breakfast disappears quickly. Too quickly. Food supplies already look dangerously thin after several unsuccessful hunts. The old woman notices your stare, Hungry predators follow hungry humans, she says quietly. Not exactly encouraging. Still true. By midday, clouds finally begin breaking apart overhead. Weak sunlight spills across wet grasslands, turning puddles silver beneath the pale sky. Steam rises gently from drying earth around camp, while the tribe repairs damaged hides and sorts damp firewood carefully. For the first time since losing in the fire, the camp almost feels peaceful again. Almost. Then the smell arrives. Strong, sudden, terrible. Several people notice simultaneously. Rotting meat. Close nearby. Hunters stand immediately while gripping spears. Children move closer toward the fire without being told. Wind shifts across camp again, carrying the scent stronger now from somewhere westward, beyond a low ridge of stones. Carew motions toward 3 hunters. You follow them reluctantly. The walk remains short, too short. Just beyond the ridge, hidden among tall grass and scattered rocks, lies the body of a young antelope, partially stripped to bone. Fresh bite marks cover its ribs, while flies swarm thickly above exposed flesh. The carcass still steams faintly. Killed recently. Very recently. Carew kneels beside the remains carefully. Left here, he whispers. The hunters exchange easy looks immediately. Predators occasionally abandoned unfinished kills naturally. Yet this feels different somehow. Too close to camp. Too visible. Almost deliberate. Hyenas sometimes stored food near favored territories. Lions occasionally abandoned prey after disturbance. Historians studying prehistoric predator behavior still debate how intentionally carnivores targeted early human camps. But standing here now, the answer feels painfully obvious. The animals know exactly where you are. One hunter suddenly points toward nearby mud. More tracks. Many more. Hyenas again. Large ones. The prints surround the carcass before spreading outward across the ridge toward camp itself. You suddenly realize something unsettling. The carcass was placed where humans would smell it. A message. Or perhaps bait. The hunters return quickly afterward, carrying the remaining antelope meat, despite obvious discomfort. Food could not be wasted during dangerous seasons. Even suspicious food. Still, nobody eats comfortably that evening. The meat tastes bitter somehow beneath drifting smoke and nervous silence. Every snapping branch beyond firelight makes people glance upward instantly. Then sunset arrives again, fast. The clouds clear completely this time, exposing enormous fields of stars overhead. Cold air pours across the valley, while the fire crackles brightly at camp center, surrounded by unusually large stacks of wood. Everyone prepares carefully tonight. Spears remain close. Burning branches stay ready. Children sleep near the middle of camp beside the strongest flames. And still the darkness gathers around you slowly, patiently. Hours pass quietly beside the fire. Smoke rises straight upward now, without wind, while orange light flickers across tired faces. One hunter begins humming softly beneath his breath. Another sharpens tools mechanically beside the flames. Then you hear breathing again, not hidden this time. Open, confident. The tribe turns together toward darkness beyond camp. Shapes emerge gradually through the grass. 1 hyena. Then 3. Then 6 more behind them. The animals stop just beyond firelight, watching silently. Moonlight reveals powerful shoulders and thick necks beneath spotted fur. Their eyes reflect orange against the flames. No laughter tonight, only staring. The hunters rise slowly with burning branches in hand. Yet the hyenas do not retreat immediately this time. One steps closer. Another lowers its head slightly, while sniffing the air around camp. You hear its claws pressing softly into dry earth. The old woman feeds another branch into the fire calmly. Crackling sparks rise upward between everyone. Then she says something almost casually. They are learning us. Cold settles across your skin despite the flames nearby. Because deep inside, you realize humans are learning them too. And somewhere far beyond the ring of watching hyenas hidden inside darkness beneath the endless prehistoric sky, something much larger suddenly growls. Suddenly. Section 8. The growl rolls across the valley like distant thunder. Low, deep, ancient. Every hyena freezes instantly beyond the firelight. Their ears lift sharply, while several turn toward the darkness behind them. Even the hunters hesitate now. Burning branches raised motionless against the cold night air. You feel the sound inside your ribs, not just your ears. The hyenas slowly begin backing away from camp, one by one. No snarling, no challenge. Only sudden caution spreading through the pack. Their heavy bodies disappear gradually into the tall grass beneath silver moonlight, until only moving shadows remain beyond the valley. Then silence returns. Nobody relaxes, because something frightened the hyenas, and that something still remains out there. Karoo grips his spear tighter beside the flames, while scanning the darkness carefully. Smoke drifts across his face in thin gray ribbons. Nearby, the children sleep uneasily beneath piled hides, unaware another danger may now circle beyond camp. The old woman keeps feeding wood into the fire steadily, never fast, never careless. She watches the flame, the way others watch predators. More wood, she says quietly. Several hunters obey immediately. The fire grows larger over the next hour, sending sparks spiraling upward into the freezing night sky. Orange light stretches farther across the valley floor, now illuminating damp stones and flattened grass around camp. Still darkness presses close beyond it. Ancient humans likely understood something modern people rarely experience fully. Night outdoors is not empty. It feels occupied. Every sound carries meaning. Every silence feels temporary. You understand that now, too. The tribe settles into uneasy rest eventually. Not sleep exactly, more like exhaustion forced into stillness. Hunters remain positioned around the fire with spears across their laps, while others curl tightly beneath animal hides close to the warmth. You lie beside the flames, staring upward. The stars appear painfully sharp tonight, after the storm's past. Thousands of cold lights stretch endlessly across the sky above the valley. Some scholars believe prehistoric humans recognized seasonal star patterns surprisingly early, using them for migration and storytelling long before agriculture existed. But tonight the stars feel indifferent, beautiful, and very far away. The growl comes again, closer this time. Children wake immediately. One begins crying softly before his mother covers his mouth against her shoulder. The hunters rise together near the fire, while burning branches crackle in nervous hands. Then something moves beyond camp. Large grass bends slowly near the valley edge. You hear heavy breathing, not rushing, not hiding, approaching openly. The fire pops sharply beside you, while smoke thickens upward through cold air. Every heartbeat feels loud now. You smell burning resin mixed with damp earth and distant animal musk. Then the creature finally steps into view. The cave lion. Moonlight washes across its enormous body, while it stands just beyond the firelight studying the camp silently. Its pale fur appears scarred along one shoulder exactly as before. Thick muscles shift beneath its coat with slow, deliberate movement. The animal looks exhausted, old, hungry beyond caution. Several hunters raise spears immediately. The lion barely notices. Instead, its eyes remain fixed on the fire. Historians examining prehistoric predator interactions often suggest older injured carnivores posed especially serious threats to humans. Animals unable to hunt normal prey sometimes targeted easier opportunities near camps or isolated travelers. This lion may already understand human weakness and human fear. The old woman steps closer toward the fire, without panic, without hurry. She lifts a burning branch carefully from the flames, while sparks drift around her hands. The hunters glance toward her uncertainly, but do not interfere. The lion watches her approach. Its massive head lowers slightly. The old woman raises the burning branch higher. Orange light flickers across the animal's eyes. Nobody breathes. For several endless seconds, the valley becomes perfectly still, except for crackling firewood and distant wind through grass. Then the lion growls again, not loudly, almost tired. The sound vibrates through the earth beneath your feet, yet something strange happens afterward. The lion does not charge, does not retreat either. Instead, it slowly lowers itself onto the ground beyond the firelight and simply watches the flames. The tribe stares back in stunned silence. You suddenly realize the animal looks thinner than before. Its ribs show faintly beneath pale fur. One rear leg drags awkwardly whenever it shifts position. Injury, age, hunger, perhaps all three. Some anthropologists believe prehistoric humans occasionally developed unusually observant relationships with predators because survival required reading animal behavior constantly. Early humans learned which animals hunted aggressively, which avoided confrontation, and which grew dangerous from desperation. Tonight feels less like a confrontation somehow, more like two exhausted survivors studying one another across the fire. The old woman slowly returns the burning branch to the flames. Nobody leaves the light, she murmurs. Nobody intends to. Hours pass strangely afterward. The lion remains near camp the entire time, not attacking, only watching. Sometimes it lifts its head toward the wind. Sometimes its ears twitch toward distant sounds across the valley. Once it coughs harshly beneath the moonlight, revealing weakness beneath its frightening size. And slowly the tribe begins understanding something unsettling. The lion fears the darkness too, not in the same way humans do, but enough to remain near fire rather than hunt alone through the valley tonight. The realization changes the atmosphere around camp completely. Children stop crying eventually. Hunters lower spears slightly. One young woman quietly feeds another branch into the flames while staring toward the lion with cautious fascination. The old woman notices your expression. Everything hunts, she says softly. Everything fears hunger more. Simple words again, heavy ones. By the darkest part of night, frost begins forming along the edges of nearby grass. Your breath fogs softly in the freezing air while the fire burns steadily at camp center, surrounded by sleeping bodies and careful watchers. The lion finally rises, slowly, painfully. It stares toward the flames one final time before turning back toward the valley. Moonlight catches its scarred shoulder while it limps through silver grass toward distant hills beyond sight. Gone again, but not forgotten. The tribe remains awake long afterward, listening to the empty darkness where the lion disappeared. No hyenas return. No wolves howl nearby. Only cold wind moves across the ancient plains. And as your eyes finally begin drifting closed, beside the fire's fading warmth, one strange thought settles quietly inside your mind. Tonight, the fire protected more than humans. Section 9. Morning arrives wrapped in white mist. The valley disappears almost completely beneath drifting gray fog, while pale sunlight struggles weakly through the clouds overhead. Moisture clings to your hair. Your skin, even the rough animal hide stretched beside the fire. Everything smells damp again. Wet grass. Smoke. Earth softened by endless rain. The lion never returned during the night. Still nobody mentions feeling safe. The fire crackles softly at camp center, while thin steam rises from drying wood stacked nearby. Several hunters sleep finally, after remaining awake until dawn, their spears resting across tired legs. Children whisper quietly beside the flames, while tracing shapes through ash using sticks. You sit close to the warmth watching smoke curl upward into the fog. Last night changed something inside the tribe. The hyenas feared the lion. The lion respected the fire. And humans sat trembling between both. Strange balance. Ancient balance. The old woman kneels beside the coals once more, turning blackened branches carefully, while studying the fire with familiar concentration. Her movements remain slow, but precise, almost ceremonial. Then she says something unexpected. There were people before fire. You glance toward her immediately. Several children do the same. The old woman feeds dry bark into the flames before continuing. They slept in trees sometimes, or narrow caves. They carried stones for throwing and stayed close together at night. She pauses. Many disappeared. Historians generally agree early human ancestors survived hundreds of thousands of years before controlling fire reliably. Exactly how they endured dangerous nights remains uncertain. Some researchers suggest temporary shelters offered partial safety. Others believe larger social groups compensated for vulnerability. Still, life without fire likely felt unimaginably harsh. Cold food, short evenings, constant darkness. The old woman lifts a charred stick from the fire and presses its blackened tip gently into the dirt beside her. When fire came, she whispers people changed. The tribe listens carefully, even Karu. Some anthropologists believe fire reshaped human evolution itself by allowing cooked food, improved nutrition, longer waking hours, and safer communal sleeping spaces. Certain scholars even argue fire influenced human brain development indirectly through diet and social behavior. Tiny flames, enormous consequences. A sudden shout interrupts the quiet morning. One hunter stands near the valley edge, waving urgently toward camp. Everyone rises immediately. You follow the others across damp grass, still silver with mist. The air feels colder away from the fire. Too cold. Somewhere nearby, unseen birds flap noisily through the fog. The hunter kneels beside strange markings pressed into mud. Not predator tracks, human footprints, fresh ones. Your pulse quickens instantly. The prints appear narrow and unfamiliar compared with those belonging to your tribe. Whoever made them traveled alone recently through the valley sometime before dawn. Karu studies the tracks carefully. Not ours. Nobody needs clarification. Ancient humans were not always alone in prehistoric landscapes. Historians and archaeologists continue debating how different human groups interacted across ancient regions. Some encounters may have involved trade or cooperation. Others likely ended violently. Nobody here knows which possibility waits nearby. The tracks lead eastward toward rocky hills beyond the valley, toward lion territory. The hunters exchange uneasy glances. Then the old woman suddenly kneels beside the prints. She touches one footprint gently before bringing her fingers near her nose. Smoke, very faint. Your heartbeat quickens further. Whoever walked through the valley carried fire. The realization spreads rapidly through the tribe. A stranger, nearby, with fire. Hope and suspicion mix instantly across every face. Fire mattered so deeply in prehistoric life that some historians suspect tribes occasionally guarded flame sources with extreme secrecy or ritual importance. Sharing fire might create alliances or attract danger. Karu finally stands. We follow. Nobody objects. The tribe moves cautiously eastward soon afterward, beneath thinning morning fog. Hunters lead with raised spears, while others carry bundles, children, and carefully protected embers inside bark containers, wrapped with dry moss. Nobody leaves the campfire behind completely anymore. Never again. The valley changes gradually as you travel. Tall grass gives way to rocky ground, scattered with twisted shrubs and pale stone ridges. Wind whistles softly through narrow gaps between boulders, carrying strange mineral smells from the hills ahead. You notice fewer animal sounds here. No birds, no insects, only wind. The footprints remain visible, surprisingly often beneath damp soil between stones. Whoever passed through traveled steadily without attempting concealment. That confidence unsettles you somehow. Then the smell reaches everyone simultaneously. Smoke, real smoke, fresh. The tribe freezes immediately. Beyond a cluster of jagged rocks ahead, thin gray trails drift upward into the pale sky. Another fire. Your stomach tightens. Children move closer beside adults, while hunters lower their bodies instinctively against the stone-covered slope. Karu motions for silence before creeping carefully forward between the rocks. You follow slowly. The smoke grows stronger ahead, mixed with unfamiliar scents. Burned roots, animal fat, something bitter underneath. Then you finally see the stranger. An old man sits alone beside a tiny sheltered fire beneath an overhanging cliff. His hair hangs long and tangled around narrow shoulders, wrapped in stitched animal skins, unlike any your tribe uses. Beside him rests a clay bundle, leaking thin ribbons of smoke through small cracks. He notices your group immediately, but does not panic. Instead, he calmly lifts one hand toward the fire, greeting or warning. Several historians still argue whether prehistoric humans from different groups exchanged technologies regularly or rediscovered certain techniques independently across regions. Yet archaeological evidence strongly suggests knowledge traveled between communities somehow. And sitting before you now may be living proof. The stranger speaks first. His language sounds rough and unfamiliar, though certain words resemble your own tribe's speech faintly. Enough for partial understanding. Enough to realize he travels alone. More importantly, enough to understand what he carries. Coals, protected inside clay. Living fire carried safely across long distances. The old woman steps forward carefully. The stranger studies her face several moments before slowly opening the clay bundle beside him. Inside, buried beneath ash and dry moss, tiny embers glow softly red against the darkness. The tribe stares silently. Portable fire, a way to survive without losing everything during storms and cold nights. The old woman smiles for the first time in days. And somewhere deep inside yourself, you suddenly realize humanity may have survived not through strength alone, but through sharing small, fragile things before darkness swallowed them completely. Section 10. The stranger's fire smells different from yours. Sharper, cleaner somehow. You crouch beside the sheltered flames beneath the stone overhang, while thin smoke twists upward into the cold morning air. The embers inside the clay container glow steadily beneath layers of pale ash, protected from wind and rain, with surprising care. Portable fire. The entire tribe stares with quiet fascination. Even Karoo lowers his spear slightly. The old traveler notices every expression calmly. Deep lines crease his weathered face, while sunlight filters weakly across tangled gray hair hanging over narrow shoulders. Scars cover both hands. Old burns, too. Circular marks across his wrists and fingers, where heat touched skin repeatedly through many winters. This man has carried fire a long time. Anthropologists still debate how prehistoric humans transported embers safely during migration. Some evidence suggests bark containers lined with ash-preserved coals remarkably well. Others believe early ceramic experiments may have emerged, partly from the need to protect valuable heat sources. Looking at the clay bundle, now the idea feels wonderfully obvious. The traveler lifts a blackened stick from the fire and pokes the glowing coals gently. "You lost yours," he says slowly. Not a question, a fact. The old woman nods once. The traveler studies the tribe quietly afterward. His eyes linger on the children. The tired hunters, the smoke-darkened hides bundled against the cold. He notices everything. Travelers survived by noticing, especially alone. Historians believe solitary movement across prehistoric landscapes remained extremely dangerous because predators, injury, weather, and hunger punished isolation quickly. Most humans depended heavily upon small groups for survival. Yet this man walks alone, which may mean he is either extremely wise or deeply strange, possibly both. The traveler gestures toward the clay container again. "Mountain people taught this," he says. The words immediately draw attention. Mountain people, another tribe, another group surviving somewhere beyond these valleys and plains. The realization feels oddly comforting. Human, familiar, distant fires beneath distant skies. The old woman kneels beside him slowly. "You traveled far." The traveler points eastward beyond the rocky hills. Burning mountain. Several hunters exchange uncertain looks. Volcanic regions occasionally provided natural fire sources for prehistoric humans, through lava flows, hot vents, or wildfires, ignited by eruptions. Some historians speculate early humans may have first encountered controlled flame through natural disasters rather than deliberate invention. The traveler taps the clay container softly. Fire never sleeps there. The children stare wide-eyed. Honestly, you do too. The tribe settles cautiously around the overhang, while the stranger shares warmth beside his small, sheltered fire. Someone offers dried roots. Another passes strips of roasted meat. The traveler accepts quietly, without greed. Outside, wind whistles softly across the rocky slopes, carrying cold mineral smells through the hills. The old woman finally asks the question resting inside everyone's mind. What hunts here? The traveler smiles faintly, not warmly. Everything. Comforting answer again. He points toward claw marks scraped across nearby stone. You had not noticed them earlier. Deep grooves run diagonally beside the overhang entrance, weathered, but unmistakable. Cave bear once lived here, he says. Several children move instinctively closer toward adults. Cave bears existed across prehistoric Eurasia and reached astonishing sizes compared with modern relatives. Historians continue debating how frequently humans and bears competed directly for caves and shelter, though archaeological evidence strongly suggests dangerous overlap, sharing sleeping space with giant bears. Another excellent prehistoric experience. The traveler notices the tribe's unease. Gone now, he says calmly, mostly reassuring. Mostly. Hours pass quietly beneath the stone shelter, while clouds drift slowly across the pale sky overhead. The tribe repairs wet clothing, dries moss bundles beside the flames, and studies the stranger's fire container repeatedly. You cannot stop staring at it either, such a small invention. Yet it changes everything. The traveler eventually demonstrates carefully. He opens the clay bundle, fully revealing layers of ash packed around several glowing coals, protected deep within the center. Warmth spills outward immediately, carrying the rich smell of charred bark and ancient smoke. Too much air kills them, he explains. He rearranges the ash gently using a carved bone tool. Too little air also kills them. The old woman nods slowly while watching every movement. Balance again. Everything in this world depends upon balance somehow. The traveler next removes a thin strip of dried fungus from a leather pouch hanging at his side. He presses it lightly against one ember before blowing carefully across the surface. Smoke rises instantly. Then a soft orange glow spreads slowly through the material. Several tribe members gasp quietly. Tinder fungus likely served as an important prehistoric fire starter because it carried embers effectively for long periods. Archaeologists have discovered preserved examples alongside ancient human remains and toolkits, knowledge hidden inside forests, waiting centuries for rediscovery. The traveler hands the glowing fungus carefully toward Karu. Carry fire, he says simply. Karu accepts it with visible respect, not fear anymore. Respect. Outside the overhang, clouds darken again unexpectedly. Wind sharpens across the hills, carrying distant thunder from somewhere beyond the eastern ridges. Another storm approaches. The tribe notices immediately. Fear flickers briefly across several faces before fading again toward the clay fire container beside the traveler. For the first time in days, confidence begins returning slowly. Not because danger vanished, because knowledge appeared. The old woman studies the traveler thoughtfully beside the flames. Why travel alone? The question hangs quietly beneath the overhang. The traveler pokes the fire several moments before answering. My people followed animals north. He pauses. I stayed with the fire. Nobody speaks afterward. Some historians suspect certain prehistoric individuals may have specialized in tasks crucial for survival, including tool-making, healing tracking, or fire-keeping. Communities likely depended heavily upon rare practical knowledge carried through memory and experience. This traveler feels like one of those people, a keeper of fragile things. Thunder rolls louder outside. Rain begins again shortly afterward, drumming steadily against the stone overhang, while smoke curls lazily upward through cracks above. The tribe gathers closer beside the sheltered fire, listening to weather sweep across the ancient hills. The traveler suddenly points toward the children. Teach them first, he says. The old woman follows his gaze silently. Fire dies when memory dies. The words settle heavily inside the shelter, while rain falls harder beyond the rocks. You watch the children sitting nearest the flames, their tired faces glowing softly orange beneath drifting smoke. One child carefully imitates the traveler's movements, using cold ashes beside the fire, practicing already, and somewhere beyond the storm-darkened hills, lightning flickers briefly across distant mountains, where perhaps fire still burns endlessly from the living earth itself. Section 11. The storm arrives before sunset. Dark clouds swallow the sky above the hills, while freezing wind sweeps across the rocky slopes in long, hollow waves. Rain begins lightly, at first tapping against stone, like cautious fingers. Then the heavens open completely. Water crashes over the land. The tribe presses deeper beneath the overhang beside the traveler's sheltered fire, while smoke coils thickly around the stone ceiling overhead. Wet animal hides steam gently near the flames, filling the shelter with heavy smells of damp fir ash and burned roots. Outside, the world disappears behind gray rain. The traveler calmly adjusts the clay fire container closer toward the warmest stones. Every movement remains careful, deliberate, nothing wasted. You notice the children watching him constantly now, learning. The old woman notices too. Good, she murmurs quietly beside the flames. Anthropologists believe prehistoric survival knowledge passed mainly through observation rather than formal teaching. Children learned by watching older tribe members repair tools, prepare food, track animals, and protect fire. Entire generations survived because somebody paid close attention beside dangerous campfires. Tonight, attention feels sacred. Thunder shakes the hills overhead. One child flinches sharply at the sound while clutching his knees tighter beneath a hide covering. The missing boy from the forest still barely speaks after the hyena encounter. His eyes drift often toward darkness outside the shelter. You understand completely. Rainwater pours steadily across the stone entrance, now forming muddy streams between scattered rocks. Wind drives cold mist through the opening, chilling your face whenever it shifts direction. Beyond the overhang, visibility extends only a few paces before the storm swallows everything. The traveler feeds another branch into the flames. Bad storms wake hungry things, he says. Excellent, very restful information. Karoo sits sharpening spear points nearby while listening carefully. Several hunters already volunteered to remain awake through the night, despite exhaustion pressing heavily across every face in the shelter. Nobody wants surprises again. The traveler suddenly gestures toward the clay container beside him. You should make more. The old woman studies the vessel closely. The container appears simple at first glance. Rough clay, rounded sides, small vent holes near the top. Yet every detail clearly serves survival somehow. Primitive ceramic technology may have developed earlier than historians once believed. Some archaeologists argue experimentation with clay likely occurred long before widespread pottery traditions emerged permanently. Necessity invents quickly, especially during freezing nights. Rain pounds harder against the hills. The storm grows violent now. Wind shrieks through narrow rock passages nearby, producing eerie whistling sounds that echo strangely beneath the overhang. Several children cover their ears against the noise, while sparks dance wildly from sudden gusts entering the shelter. Then lightning flashes. Bright white light floods the valley beyond the rocks for one startling instant, and during that flash you see movement outside. Large movement. Karoo sees it too. The hunters rise immediately. The traveler narrows his eyes toward the rain-soaked darkness, while gripping a burning branch from the fire. Thunder crashes overhead seconds later, shaking loose pebbles from the stone ceiling. Nobody speaks. Everyone listens. At first you hear only rain. Then something else emerges beneath the storm. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Dragging slightly. The cave lion again. The realization spreads instantly through the shelter. Children move backward toward the rear wall, while hunters position themselves near the entrance, holding spears low and ready. Firelight flickers across nervous faces, while smoke thickens heavily inside the confined space. The footsteps stop outside, very close. You smell wet fur immediately afterward. Strong, ancient, mixed now with something metallic beneath the rain scent. Blood. The lion breathes heavily somewhere beyond sight, while water drips steadily from the rocks outside. Lightning flashes again, briefly illuminating its silhouette near the entrance. The animal looks worse tonight. Its scarred shoulder hangs lower than before. One rear leg barely supports weight properly now. Rain darkens its fur completely, while ribs show sharply beneath pale skin. The old woman whispers softly beside you. Dying things become dangerous. Historians studying predator attacks believe weakened carnivores likely posed severe threats to prehistoric humans because injury pushed them toward easier prey and risky behavior. And this lion looks desperate now. The animal takes one limping step closer toward the overhang. Several hunters raise spears immediately. The traveler lifts his burning branch higher. Firelight reflects across the lion's eyes. Then something unexpected happens. The lion stops advancing. Not from fear exactly, from exhaustion. Slowly, painfully, the massive animal lowers itself onto the wet ground outside the shelter entrance. Rain pours across its scarred body, while steam rises faintly from its breathing. It does not growl, does not threaten, simply lies there, watching the fire again. The tribe stares silently. The storm roars around the hills, while lightning flashes repeatedly across dark skies overhead. Yet inside the overhang, an uneasy stillness settles beside the flames. Two kinds of survivors sharing shelter from the storm. The traveler studies the lion thoughtfully. "Old hunter," he murmurs. You notice deep scars across the animal's muzzle now. Torn ears. Broken teeth visible whenever it breathes heavily through parted jaws. This creature once ruled enormous territories across these plains. Now it seeks warmth beside human fire. Time humbles everything, eventually. One child slowly crawls closer toward the flames beside the old woman. "Will it die?" he whispers. Nobody answers immediately. Historians still debate whether prehistoric humans occasionally respected certain predators, spiritually or symbolically, because of their strength and persistence. Cave paintings throughout ancient Europe often depicted lions, bears, and wolves with remarkable detail and attention. Fear sometimes becomes admiration. The old woman finally speaks softly. "Everything dies." She pauses. Not everything survives this long. Outside, the lion lifts its head weakly toward the storm-darkened sky. Rainwater streams down its face while distant thunder rolls endlessly across the mountains. Then another sound reaches the shelter. Faint, far away. Hyena laughter. The lion hears it too. Its ears twitch sharply despite exhaustion. The hunters tighten their grips on spears once more, while the fire crackles steadily at the center of the shelter. Smoke drifts upward, carrying warmth memory, and the stubborn human refusal to surrender darkness easily. And somewhere beyond the storm, the hyenas are gathering again. Section 12. The hyena laughter drifts through the storm, like broken human voices, far away at first, then closer. Rain continues hammering the hills outside the shelter, while the fire crackles steadily beneath the stone overhang. Smoke clings heavily beneath the ceiling, now stinging your eyes, and coating every breath with the bitter taste of ash. Nobody sleeps, not with hyenas gathering outside, not with the dying cave lion stretched near the entrance. The massive animal lifts its head weakly, each time distant laughter echoes across the valley. Its breathing sounds rough now, wet, painful. Steam rises faintly from its scarred body whenever cold wind blows rain beneath the shelter. The tribe watches it carefully, fearfully. Yet something else has appeared too. Pity. The old woman quietly tears a strip of roasted meat and tosses it toward the lion. Several hunters glance toward her sharply, startled by the gesture. The lion barely reacts at first. Then slowly, stiffly, it drags itself forward enough to sniff the meat before swallowing it in one exhausted motion. No growl, no threat, just hunger. Anthropologists studying prehistoric symbolism often wonder whether ancient humans occasionally formed complicated emotional relationships with dangerous animals. Cave paintings sometimes portrayed predators with remarkable care and detail, suggesting more than simple fear. Perhaps survival creates strange respect, especially during long nights beside shared firelight. The hyenas laugh again. Closer now. You hear movement through rocks outside the shelter shortly afterward. Claws scrape against wet stone. Several hunters rise immediately near the entrance while gripping burning branches tightly. Lightning flashes across the valley. For one bright heartbeat, you see them. Dozens. Hyenas spread across the hills beyond the shelter, their pale eyes reflecting white against the storm. Rain darkens their spotted fur, while broad shoulders move restlessly among the rocks. Waiting, the traveler exhales softly beside the fire. Too many. Nobody disagrees. Large scavenger groups likely posed terrifying challenges for prehistoric humans, because persistence often mattered more than direct attack. Hyenas could wait. Follow. Pressure weakened camps over long periods. Tonight they smell weakness everywhere. The lion, the children, the tired hunters, even the fire. Karoo steps beside the entrance holding a burning branch outward toward the darkness. Orange light dances wildly across wet stones, while thunder rolls overhead. The nearest hyenas retreat slightly, only slightly. The tribe notices immediately. Their fear of fire weakens too. A bad sign. The old woman suddenly points toward the rear of the shelter. There. You turn quickly. At first you notice only darkness beyond a narrow crack, splitting the stone wall deeper inside the overhang. Then slowly you realize the crack opens into a descending passage hidden behind hanging roots and shadows. A cave. The traveler nods once. Deep tunnels, he says quietly. Several children stare nervously toward the opening. Honestly, you do too. Prehistoric caves offered protection from weather and predators, but they carried dangers of their own. Darkness, tight spaces, unstable rock, and sometimes other creatures already living inside. Still safer than waiting outside with hyenas. Probably. The laughter grows louder again beyond the rain. Closer now. One hyena suddenly appears near the shelter entrance, pacing boldly across wet stone, while staring directly toward the fire. Its heavy jaws glisten beneath rainwater. Another joins moments later, farther uphill. Karoo thrusts his burning branch outward immediately. The animals hesitate, but do not fully retreat. The old woman studies the fire thoughtfully, several moments before speaking. We move the children inside. The tribe obeys quickly. Small bundles gather first. Animal hides, dry moss, embers carefully protected inside bark wrappings. Then the children crawl nervously toward the narrow cave passage, while adults lift burning branches high enough to illuminate rough stone walls, disappearing into darkness below. Cold air flows upward from the tunnel, very cold. You follow slowly behind the others, carrying dry wood against your chest. The stone floor slopes downward, unevenly beneath your feet, while smoke drifts strangely through the narrow passage. The cave smells ancient. Damp earth, minerals, something older underneath. Animal scent, perhaps, or simply time itself. The passage widens gradually after several turns. Soon, the tribe enters a broad underground chamber, where shadows stretch endlessly beyond flickering firelight. Water drips steadily from distant cracks, while pale mineral formations rise from the floor like frozen shapes. Children press close beside adults immediately. The darkness here feels enormous. The traveler plants one burning branch into a crack between stones, while others build a second fire carefully near the chamber center. Smoke curls slowly upward toward unseen openings far above. The old woman examines the walls silently. Then she stops moving. You follow her gaze. Red shapes cover the stone nearby. Handprints, dozens of them. Ancient red handprints pressed against the cave wall, using pigment long ago. Some appear adult-sized, others painfully small. Faded animal figures stretch between them, beneath mineral stains and centuries of smoke. The chamber becomes silent. Historians still argue about the meaning of prehistoric cave art. Rituals, stories, hunting magic, territorial markers. Nobody knows completely. Yet handprints appear across many ancient cave systems worldwide, linking distant human groups through remarkably similar expressions. Someone stood here thousands of years ago and pressed their hand against stone. Proof of existence, proof they survived another night. One child reaches toward the nearest handprint carefully. Who were they? He whispers. Nobody answers, because nobody can. Outside the cave, hyena laughter suddenly erupts much closer than before. The sound echoes strangely through the tunnel entrance, distorted into sharp, broken cries beneath the earth. The tribe tightens together around the growing fire. The lion growls weakly somewhere near the cave entrance above. Then comes the sound that changes everything. A scream. Human. Karoo. The hunters leap upright immediately, while sparks burst upward from the fire. Another storm scream follows from outside the tunnel, accompanied by snarling chaos and scraping claws against stone. The hyenas attacked. Without thinking, several hunters rush back toward the tunnel entrance carrying burning branches and spears. You follow them upward through twisting darkness while fear pounds hard against your ribs. The storm still rages outside. Lightning flashes violently across the rocks near the shelter entrance, where shadows move wildly through rain and smoke. Then you see the lion, standing again, bleeding now. Its scarred body blocks the shelter entrance, while snarling hyenas circle through the storm around it. The dying lion has chosen its ground, and tonight, it refuses to surrender the fire. Section 13. Rain lashes across the rocks, while the cave lion roars into the storm. The sound shakes the valley. Not strong anymore, not victorious, but furious enough to stop every hyena momentarily in the flashing white light of the storm. Blood runs dark across the lion's scarred shoulder, while its massive body stands between the shelter entrance and the circling pack. The animal has become a wall, a dying wall. Karoo stumbles backward near the rocks, clutching one arm tightly against his chest. Blood drips between his fingers onto the rain-soaked stone beneath him. Two hunters rush toward him immediately, while thrusting burning branches towards snapping jaws, emerging through darkness. The hyenas surge closer again. Lightning flashes overhead. For one terrifying moment, you see everything clearly. Wet fur, open jaws, steam rising from animal breath, firelight dancing across rain and blood, and frightened human faces. Then darkness crashes back over the valley. The lion lunges suddenly. Not far, not fast, but enough. Its massive paws slam against one hyena near the shelter entrance, sending the animal tumbling sideways through mud and loose stone. The rest recoil immediately beneath furious snarling. The lion pays dearly for the movement. Its injured leg buckles violently afterward. The huge predator nearly collapses before regaining balance beside the rocks. Every breath now sounds ragged, painful. Ancient humans likely witnessed brutal predator conflicts regularly across dangerous landscapes, where food remained scarce and territory mattered deeply. Historians still debate whether humans sometimes exploited those rivalries, intentionally using fire or noise to manipulate competing carnivores near camps. Tonight, nobody manipulates anything. Everyone simply survives moment by moment. Karoo gasps sharply, while the old woman reaches his side near the shelter. A deep bite wound tears across his forearm, where one hyena nearly dragged him down during the attack. Rainwater washes blood constantly across the stone. The old woman reacts immediately. Inside, she orders. Several hunters help pull Karoo toward the cave tunnel, while others remain near the entrance, holding burning branches outward against the circling pack. The hyenas hesitate again. The fire still matters. Barely. You retreat backward into the tunnel carrying one burning branch high above your head. Smoke curls along the stone ceiling, while water drips steadily around your feet. Behind you, the wounded lion remains outside beside the entrance, growling low against the storm, guarding or trapped, perhaps both. Inside the larger chamber, fear spreads quickly once the tribe sees Karoo's injury. Children cry softly, while adults gather close around the growing fire near the painted walls. Smoke thickens beneath the cavern ceiling, carrying sharp medicinal smells from crushed leaves. The old woman presses against the wound. Karoo grits his teeth silently. His face looks pale beneath the firelight. The traveler kneels beside him while examining the bite carefully. Not broken, he murmurs finally. Relief spreads quietly through the chamber. A shattered arm could mean death out here, eventually. Infection, weakness, inability to hunt. Prehistoric injuries carried terrifying consequences long after the original danger passed. The old woman wraps the wound tightly using softened hide strips, while Karoo stares into the flames, breathing hard through pain. Outside, thunder continues rolling across the hills, and beneath it, you still hear the hyenas, waiting. The tribe settles deeper inside the cave afterward, while hunters guard the tunnel entrance in exhausted silence. Several fires now burn carefully throughout the chamber, their orange glow illuminating ancient handprints and faded animal paintings along the walls. The cave feels warmer than outside. Safer too, yet the darkness beyond the firelight remains enormous underground. Shadows move strangely against uneven stone, while distant dripping echoes through unseen tunnels farther below. One child points toward the painted wall nearby. What animal is that? You follow his gaze. A strange figure stretches across the stone beside the red handprints. Large body, thick neck, curved tusks. A mammoth. Ancient people painted creatures they feared, hunted, admired or remembered. Historians still argue whether cave art served spiritual purposes, storytelling traditions, territorial warnings, or something entirely lost to time. Maybe all of them. The old woman studies the mammoth painting quietly. People lived here long before us, she says softly. The realization settles strangely through the chamber. Other fires once burned here. Other children once slept beneath these shadows. Other frightened humans once listened to storms and predators outside the cave entrance while hoping dawn would return again. You suddenly feel connected to invisible strangers across thousands of years. The traveler feeds another branch into the nearest fire. Fire keeps memory alive, he says. The words linger gently in the smoky air. One young girl slowly presses her hand against the cave wall, beside an ancient red handprint. Her fingers appear much smaller against the faded shape, yet somehow similar, human beings repeating themselves across endless winters. Outside the tunnel entrance, a sudden roar echoes through the cave. The lion again, followed instantly by snarling chaos. The hunters leap upright immediately while gripping spears and burning branches. Children cry out behind them as shadows flicker wildly across painted walls. Then silence crashes down. No growling, no laughter, only rain. The hunters stare toward the tunnel entrance uncertainly, several long moments before slowly moving upward again. You follow cautiously behind them, carrying fire into the narrow passage. Cold wind rushes down the tunnel, now carrying sharp smells of wet stone and animal blood. When you finally emerge near the shelter entrance, the storm has weakened considerably. Rain falls lighter now beneath fading thunderclouds drifting across the valley. The hyenas are gone. Only muddy tracks remain scattered across the rocks. And near the shelter entrance, the cave lion lies motionless beside the rain-darkened stone. Steam rises faintly from its body. One eye remains partially open toward the valley beyond. The hunters stand silently around it. No triumph. No celebration, only exhaustion. The old woman kneels beside the fallen predator slowly. She touches its scarred shoulder once before rising again without speaking. Some historians believe prehistoric humans occasionally honored dangerous animals after death because survival demanded acknowledging strength even in enemies. Standing here now, you understand why. The storm clouds finally begin breaking apart overhead. Moonlight spills softly across the wet hills, while smoke rises from the cave entrance behind you, carrying warmth into the freezing night air. And beside the dead lion, you suddenly realize something unsettling. The fire protected your tribe tonight. But the lion bought time for the flames to survive. Section 14. The valley smells different after death. Rainwater washes blood slowly between the rocks outside the cave, while cold wind drifts across the hills, carrying scents of wet stone smoke and fading animal musk. Dawn still hides beyond thick clouds, though darkness no longer feels as heavy as before. The hyenas never returned. Perhaps the lion's final stand frightened them away. Perhaps the storm scattered the pack across distant valleys again. Or perhaps even scavengers understand when a place has become too costly. The tribe gathers quietly near the shelter entrance around the lion's body. Nobody speaks loudly. Children stare silently from behind adults, while smoke curls upward from burning branches planted between stones nearby. The old woman kneels beside the fallen predator once more, studying its scarred face beneath pale moonlight. Its eyes remain open, clouded now, still watching the valley somehow. Karoo stands nearby, holding his wrapped arm carefully against his chest. Pain tightens his face whenever he moves, though he refuses help while staring toward the lion. "It saved us one child," whispers. The statement unsettles everyone slightly, because it feels true. Historians still debate how prehistoric humans emotionally interpreted dangerous animals living beside them. Some cave paintings suggest admiration alongside fear. Certain predators appeared repeatedly in ancient art, despite the danger they posed. Perhaps humans respected endurance above all else. The old woman finally closes the lion's eyes gently using soot-darkened fingers. "Old hunter," she murmurs softly. The wind answers through the rocks. Nothing more. The tribe eventually carries the body farther from the shelter after sunrise, finally breaks weakly through the clouds. Several hunters drag the enormous animal carefully across damp grass toward a rocky ridge overlooking the valley below. No celebration follows. No trophies taken, only quiet effort. The children watch from the cave entrance, while the adults work in silence beneath pale morning light. Steam rises from the earth as sunlight slowly warms the soaked hills around you. The traveler notices your expression. In hard winters, he says quietly, everything becomes closer. You think you understand. Fire, predators, strangers, even death itself. All living things gathering near warmth, while darkness presses endlessly around them. The tribe spends the day inside and around the cave shelter, recovering from exhaustion. Karoo rests beside the fire, while the old woman changes his bandages repeatedly, using crushed leaves and heated stones. Infection terrified prehistoric people long before they understood germs. Certain plants likely became important medicinal tools through generations of observation and survival. Historians still discover evidence suggesting surprisingly advanced prehistoric healing practices in some regions. Trial and error taught harsh lessons, usually painful ones. Children begin exploring the painted cave chamber more confidently, now that daylight softens the atmosphere around the shelter. One boy traces animal figures carefully through the air without touching the stone itself. Another counts handprints beside the firelight. The missing boy from the forest finally speaks more today. Mostly questions. Who painted these? Where did they go? Did they lose their fire too? Nobody has answers. The traveler sits quietly sharpening a bone needle beside the flames, while listening to the children wonder about invisible people long vanished from the world. Smoke drifts around him softly, carrying the rich smell of burned resin and drying moss. Then he says something strange. Maybe they still live. Several children glance upward immediately. The traveler gestures toward the painted walls, not their bodies. He taps his chest lightly. They're remembering. The cave grows very quiet afterward. Anthropologists often describe storytelling and symbolic art as forms of cultural memory that allowed humans to preserve knowledge across generations. Long before writing existed, stories carried survival itself. Memory became shelter. The old woman smiles faintly beside the flames. "You speak like smoke," she tells the traveler. He laughs softly, a surprisingly warm sound. Outside, the weather finally clears fully by late afternoon. Blue sky spreads slowly across the valley, while sunlight glitters against rainwater trapped between stones. Birds return cautiously to nearby trees for the first time in days. The world breathes again. Several hunters leave briefly to search for food near the lower plains, while others remain repairing tools and sorting firewood carefully beside the cave entrance. Nobody wanders alone anymore, not after everything. You sit near the outer rocks, watching smoke rise from the sheltered fires into the brightening sky. The valley stretches endlessly below, covered in silver grass, bending beneath cold wind. Beautiful, dangerous, ancient. Then the traveler approaches carrying the clay fire container carefully against his chest. He sits beside you quietly. After several moments, he opens the container, slightly revealing glowing embers, sleeping beneath ash. You know the secret now, he says. You study the tiny red lights within the clay darkness. Which secret? The traveler smiles faintly. Fire is alive differently than animals. He pauses. You feed it, carry it, protect it, but it also changes you while you guard it. The words settle heavily inside your thoughts. Historians often describe fire as humanity's greatest technological turning point because it reshaped food migration safety, social behavior, and eventually civilization itself. Yet sitting beside these ancient hills, the relationship feels more personal somehow. Humans did not simply use fire. Humans lived beside it. The traveler closes the clay container again carefully. People who lose fire become frightened, he says softly. People who keep fire become people. The evening grows colder as sunlight fades behind distant mountains. Smoke drifts golden beneath the setting sky, while hunters finally return carrying rabbits and roots gathered from the lower plains. Not much. Enough. Tonight, the tribe eats quietly, beside steady flames within the painted cave chamber. Children fall asleep easier now beneath warm hides, while adults speak softly around the fire, instead of listening constantly for predators. Exhaustion finally begins loosening its grip. Outside the cave entrance, stars slowly emerge once more above the ancient valley. And for the first time since the fire died beside the grasslands days ago, the darkness no longer feels unbeatable, only enormous, only waiting, but no longer alone. Section 15. The nights become quieter after the lion dies. Not safe, never safe, but quieter. The hyenas still call occasionally from distant ridges after sunset, their strange laughter drifting faintly across the plains beyond the hills. Wolves howl farther north beneath the stars. Once, during the deepest part of night, something enormous crashes through trees far below the cave, before disappearing again into darkness. Yet none approach the fire now, the tribe notices, and slowly, cautiously, people begin breathing differently. You notice it most during the evenings, before everyone huddled tightly around the flames with rigid shoulders and nervous eyes. Meals disappeared quickly. Conversations stayed short. Sleep came only in frightened fragments. Now the fire feels less like a barricade, more like home. Children laugh again sometimes beside the painted cave walls. Hunters repair tools while speaking softly, instead of staring constantly into darkness. One young woman even begins humming while preparing roots near the flames. Tiny changes, enormous meaning. Anthropologists believe fire transformed early human social life by extending waking hours safely beyond sunset. Instead of darkness ending activity immediately, humans gathered together around flames to eat, teach repair tools, and tell stories. Civilization may have begun with simple evenings like these. Not cities, not kings, just exhausted humans sitting beside warmth while the night waited outside. The old woman notices the children playing near the cave wall one evening and smiles faintly into the fire. Before fire, she says quietly, people slept quickly. One child looks confused. Why? Darkness came. Simple answer. True answer. Without fire, ancient nights became dangerous almost immediately. Human eyesight performs poorly in darkness compared with many predators. Flames changed the balance by pushing danger farther away and allowing groups to remain awake longer after sunset. The traveler listens carefully while carving small grooves into a piece of antler beside the flames. Fire also changed food, he adds. Several children immediately pay attention again. Food discussions usually succeed. The traveler lifts a roasted root from the edge of the fire and breaks it open carefully. Steam rises, carrying sweet, earthy smells through the cave chamber. Cooked food softens, he explains, makes bodies stronger. Historians and evolutionary scientists widely agree cooking likely improved human nutrition dramatically by making food easier to digest and increasing available calories. Some researchers even argue cooking supported larger human brain development over time, all from controlling heat. Honestly, prehistoric humans deserved more credit. One child suddenly asks the traveler a serious question. Who first made fire? The cave grows quiet. Even the hunters glance upward from their work. The traveler smiles slowly. Everyone asks that eventually. Then he points toward the cave entrance where evening light fades beyond drifting smoke. Maybe lightning made the first fire. Maybe burning trees after storms. He shrugs gently. Maybe someone very stubborn rubbed sticks together for too long. The old woman snorts softly beside the flames. Very stubborn. She agrees. Historians still debate exactly when humans first controlled fire consistently, because archaeological evidence remains difficult to interpret. Burned bones and ash layers may result from natural fires or deliberate human activity. The timeline stretches across hundreds of thousands of uncertain years. But one truth remains clear. Once humans learned fire, they never willingly returned to darkness. Outside sunset paints the valley deep orange beneath gathering stars. Cold air drifts into the cave entrance, carrying scents of dry grass and distant pine. Smoke rises steadily through cracks in the stone ceiling, while the evening fire burns bright against the painted walls. The missing boy from the forest sits unusually close beside the flames tonight. You notice him staring into the coals thoughtfully. "What are you thinking?" the old woman asks. The boy hesitates. Fire sounds alive. Nobody laughs, because everyone understands exactly what he means. The flames crackle constantly beside you. They breathe, shift, consume. Glow brighter when fed, fade when neglected. Ancient humans likely saw fire as something living long before science explained combustion. Honestly, watching it now, science still feels slightly unconvinced. The traveler tosses powdered resin into the flames suddenly. Golden sparks burst upward in a swirling cloud, while sweet smoke fills the cave chamber instantly. Several children gasp in delight. One laughs loudly enough to echo through the stone tunnels beyond. For a moment, the cave feels almost festive. The old woman watches the sparks drift upward toward darkness above. "Fire changes faces too," she murmurs. You realize she means the light itself. Without flames, human expressions vanish at night. Faces disappear completely into darkness. But beside firelight, every emotion becomes visible. Fear, laughter, exhaustion, grief, connection. Anthropologists suspect firelight may even have shaped early human communication by encouraging longer evening conversations and emotional bonding within groups. The fire does not simply protect bodies, it gathers minds together. Outside the cave, wind rises softly through the hills, while stars spread endlessly across the ancient sky. The hunters eventually settle near the entrance with spears resting beside them, though their posture appears calmer now. Karoo's injured arm heals slowly. The bite still aches beneath fresh wrappings, but fever never arrived. Another victory, small but precious. The traveler studies the wound carefully, while replacing heated stones beside Karoo's arm. "Fire heals too," he says quietly. The warmth relaxes tight muscles, while steam rises gently from the wrapped skin. Heated stones, smoke treatments, and boiled water likely became important prehistoric healing tools long before organized medicine existed. Again, fire changes everything. The children finally drift asleep one by one. beside the flames, their breathing soft beneath layered hides. Shadows flicker gently across the painted mammoths, and handprints covering the cave walls. The old woman remains awake longer than most. You sit beside her watching the fire settle lower into glowing orange coals. After several quiet moments, she speaks again. "When I was young, I thought fire belonged to humans." She pokes the embers softly using a charred branch. "Now I think humans belong to fire." The words linger inside the cave long afterward, while smoke curls upward through ancient darkness. And somewhere deep within yourself, you begin understanding exactly what she means. Section 16. The cold returns suddenly 3 nights later. Not the gentle evening chill you have grown used to, beside the cave fires. This cold arrives sharp and heavy, pouring down from the northern plains after sunset, like invisible water flooding the valley below. Even the stones feel frozen. You wake sometime before dawn beneath layered animal hides, your breath pale in the darkness around the dying embers. The cave chamber smells of smoke-damp earth and sleeping bodies pressed close together against the freezing air. The fire burned lower than expected overnight. Several hunters still sleep near the entrance, wrapped tightly beneath hides, while faint orange coals pulse weakly near the cave center. The old woman already kneels beside them, feeding thin branches carefully into the ash, always awake before everyone else. The traveler sits nearby, sharpening a flint blade beneath flickering firelight, while listening to the wind outside. "It snowed north of here," he says quietly. You feel it immediately after stepping near the cave entrance. The air bites your lungs. Morning mist drifts low across the valley, while frost coats the grass silver beneath pale sunlight. Far beyond the hills, distant mountains shine white along their peaks. Winter approaches. Ancient humans lived constantly beside seasonal danger. Historians believe sudden climate shifts, long winters, and failed migrations likely destroyed entire prehistoric groups regularly. A warm valley could become deadly within days. Fire mattered most when cold arrived. The tribe understands that instinctively now. Everyone gathers wood immediately after sunrise. Children help carry branches smaller than their arms, while hunters drag fallen limbs from nearby woodland toward the cave. Even Karu joins, despite his healing injury, refusing rest whenever others work. The woodpile grows steadily beside the shelter entrance. Still, nobody looks satisfied. Fear of losing fire never completely left the tribe after that first terrible night beside dead ashes, and perhaps it never should. By midday, clouds drift across the sky again, while cold wind sweeps endlessly through the valley below. Smoke rises straight upward from the cave fires, carrying scents of pine resin and charred bark into the pale afternoon air. The traveler suddenly crouches near the cave entrance, watching something. You follow his gaze downward toward the muddy ground near the rocks outside. Footprints, large ones, fresh, not hyenas, not lion tracks either. The shape looks wrong somehow. Wider, heavier, human-like in structure, but far too large for any tribe member. Several hunters gather nearby immediately. Karu studies the prints silently, while tightening his grip on a spear. The traveler kneels slowly beside the tracks. "Not human," he murmurs. One child nearby whispers nervously. "Bear." The traveler shakes his head. "No claws." Cold moves quietly through your stomach. The footprints continue along the ridge above the valley, before disappearing among scattered rocks farther uphill. Deep impressions suggest something enormously heavy walked there recently during the night, and silently too. Historians still debate which large predators or human relatives early Homo sapiens may have encountered across prehistoric Eurasia. Ancient landscapes contained creatures now vanished completely from memory, except through bones and speculation. Some mysteries remain buried beneath ice and time. The old woman studies the tracks carefully without speaking. Then she says something unsettling. It watched the cave. Everyone becomes silent. The footprints do angle repeatedly toward the shelter entrance before continuing along the ridge. Whatever made them notice the fires below and chose not to approach, that should feel comforting. Instead, it feels deliberate. The hunters spend the afternoon reinforcing the cave entrance with stacked branches and sharpened stakes pushed between rocks. Primitive barriers would not stop something truly determined. But humans build protections partly to calm themselves. Modern people still do exactly the same thing. Doors, locks, alarm systems, ancient fear wearing newer clothes. As evening falls, snow begins drifting lightly across the valley for the first time. Tiny white flakes swirl through the darkening sky while the tribe gathers tightly around the cave fires. Children stare in wonder toward the entrance while cold wind carries snowflakes briefly into the tunnel before they melt against warm stone. The old woman feeds extra wood into the flames. Long winter coming, she says quietly. The traveler nods. Animals will move south. Hungry. Very. The cave grows quieter afterward. Winter changed prehistoric life dramatically. Food became scarce. Travel dangerous. Predators desperate. Historians believe cold seasons likely forced stronger human cooperation because isolated individuals rarely survived long alone. Tonight, the tribe sits unusually close together beside the flames. The painted mammoths along the walls seem almost alive beneath flickering firelight, while smoke drifts lazily upward through the chamber. Outside, snow thickens steadily beneath rising wind. One child points toward the ancient handprints nearby. Did they survive winter too? Nobody answers immediately. Then the old woman speaks softly into the fire. Some did. The honesty of the answer settles heavily inside the cave. Later that night, long after most children sleep beneath heavy hides, you remain awake beside the embers, listening to wind howl softly across the hills outside. The traveler still sits nearby, watching the flames. You feel it now, he says quietly. You glance toward him uncertainly. The fire. He gestures toward the glowing coals. You stop thinking about yourself first. You think about keeping this alive. He pauses. That is how people become tribes. Anthropologists often describe communal fire as a center for cooperation because everyone depended upon it equally. Protecting flames required shared labor, shared vigilance, shared responsibility. The fire belongs to everyone, or nobody survives. A sudden sound interrupts the quiet. Crunching snow outside the cave. Heavy footsteps. The hunters wake instantly, near the entrance, while spears rise through flickering shadows. Snow blows sideways beyond the tunnel mouth, now turning the outside world pale and ghostly beneath moonlight. Then a shape appears briefly along the ridge above the cave. Tall, broad, walking upright. It pauses only long enough to look toward the firelight glowing from the shelter entrance, then disappears into the snowstorm without a sound. The tribe remains frozen beside the flames. Nobody speaks, because somewhere beyond the cave, beyond the valley, beyond the reach of your fragile human fire, something unknown still walks through the ancient winter darkness. Section 17. Snow covers the valley by morning. Not deep yet, just enough to silence the world. The endless grasslands below the cave now shimmer pale beneath weak winter sunlight, while frost clings thickly across every rock and branch. Even the wind sounds softer after snowfall, moving across the land, with a long, hushed whisper instead of its usual restless howl. You stand near the cave entrance, breathing clouds into the freezing air. The upright figure from the night before left no clear tracks, only scattered disturbances along the ridge where snow drifted unevenly across stone. The hunters searched briefly after dawn, but returned quickly unsettled by the silence hanging over the hills. Whatever walked there moved carefully, or understood winter better than humans. The tribe stays close to the cave today. Smoke rises steadily from the shelter fires, while children huddle beside warm stones wrapped in layered hides. Everyone moves slower now. Cold steals energy quietly. Even simple tasks feel heavier beneath freezing air. The traveler notices immediately. Winter teaches patience, he says, while feeding bark into the flames. Karu snorts softly beside him. Winter teaches hunger. Also true. Prehistoric winters likely devastated ancient human populations regularly through starvation exposure and disease. Historians still debate how some small groups survived prolonged cold seasons before advanced clothing storage systems or permanent shelter existed. Honestly, humans surviving at all begins sounding increasingly suspicious. The old woman spends most of the morning teaching children how to prepare ember bundles beside the fire. Tiny hands carefully pack ash around glowing coals, while smoke curls upward through the cave chamber. Not too tight, she warns gently. One boy presses the ash harder anyway. The ember immediately darkens. The old woman shakes her head. Fire needs breathing. Simple lesson. Important lesson. The traveler watches the children thoughtfully, while sharpening a long bone needle beside the flames. Snowlight reflects softly across the painted walls around him, illuminating ancient mammoths and faded red handprints left by forgotten people. Then he says something unexpected. Smoke hides secrets. Several children glance upward curiously. The traveler tosses dried leaves into the fire. Thick white smoke rises instantly, carrying a bitter, sharp smell through the chamber. Some plants change dreams, he says quietly. The old woman gives him a narrow look. Not for children. The traveler smiles faintly. Historians still argue whether prehistoric humans experimented with medicinal or mind-altering plants intentionally during rituals, healing, or storytelling practices. Certain ancient cave sites contain traces of burned herbs and unusual plant remains, though interpretation remains uncertain. Humans have always been curious creatures, especially beside fires. Outside, the snow thickens again by afternoon. Gray clouds swallow the valley, while cold wind drives white flurries across the hills in endless swirling sheets. Visibility shrinks steadily until the world beyond the cave appears ghostly and blurred. The tribe grows quieter. Winter silence changes people somehow. Even laughter sounds softer. One child eventually curls beside the old woman near the fire. Tell us about the burning mountain. Several others immediately move closer. The traveler exhales slowly before speaking. Far east. He begins. The earth cracks open beneath black stone cliffs. Smoke rises day and night. His eyes reflect the firelight strangely now. Sometimes rivers of glowing rock move across the ground like slow fire animals. The children stare wide-eyed. Even the hunters listen. Volcanic regions likely fascinated prehistoric humans profoundly because they provided natural heat, strange minerals, and terrifying displays of living fire emerging directly from the earth itself. The traveler pokes the flames gently with a charred stick. Mountain people carried fire from there long ago. The old woman nods thoughtfully. Before clay containers. Before many things. Historians still debate whether early humans first controlled fire independently or borrowed flames repeatedly from natural sources, such as lightning strikes, wildfires, or volcanic activity. Perhaps humanity learned survival from disasters themselves. Outside the cave, wind suddenly stops. The silence arrives so abruptly that everyone notices. No snow movement, no branches creaking, nothing. The traveler slowly lifts his head, listening. Then comes the sound. A low knocking echo from somewhere deeper inside the cave. 3 slow impacts. Stone against stone. The tribe freezes instantly. Children move closer toward adults, while hunters reach for spears beside the entrance tunnel. The fire crackles softly at the chamber center, suddenly sounding far too loud inside the stillness. The knocking comes again, farther below, deep within the cave system beyond the painted chamber. Nobody speaks. The old woman stands carefully beside the flames. Water, one child whispers hopefully, but the traveler's face tightens. Number. Another knock echoes upward through the darkness. Slow, deliberate. Historians still argue how extensively prehistoric humans explored cave systems beyond living chambers. Deep caves carried enormous risks, including collapse, darkness, flooding, and getting lost permanently underground. Yet humans entered them anyway, often carrying fire into impossible darkness. Karoo rises despite his injured arm. We look. Nobody truly wants to, but fear grows larger when ignored. Soon, several hunters prepare burning branches, while the traveler gathers extra embers into portable moss bundles. The flames illuminate nervous faces against the painted walls, while smoke thickens around the chamber ceiling. The old woman presses a glowing branch into your hand. "Stay near the fire," she says quietly. The words feel older than language itself. The hunting group finally moves toward the deeper tunnel beyond the chamber. Their firelight stretches across rough stone walls before slowly disappearing downward into blackness beneath the earth. The tribe waits silently afterward, listening. Only distant dripping sounds return from below. Then, far underground, somewhere beyond sight beneath ancient stone, you hear something answer the knocking. Not an animal, not wind, a human voice. Section 18. The voice rises again from deep beneath the cave. Faint, human, impossible. Every person remaining beside the fire stiffens immediately. Children clutch tightly against their mothers, while shadows flicker nervously across the painted walls. The cave suddenly feels enormous again, full of hidden tunnels and ancient darkness stretching far below the earth. You stare toward the black passage where the hunters disappeared moments earlier. Another voice answers. Then silence. The old woman grips your burning branch tighter beside the flames. Smoke drifts around her lined face, while snowlight glows weakly through the distant cave entrance behind the tribe. They found someone. A child whispers, "Maybe," or something pretending very well. Historians still debate whether different prehistoric human groups encountered one another regularly, or only during rare migrations and harsh seasons. Ancient landscapes likely held scattered communities separated by dangerous distances, uncertain languages, and brutal winters. Meeting strangers carried enormous risk, but also possibility. The tribe waits anxiously beside the fires, while distant echoes drift occasionally upward from below. Stone against stone. Brief voices. Footsteps somewhere inside the darkness beneath the cave chamber. Then firelight appears again, moving upward. Through the tunnel. The hunters return slowly from below, carrying burning branches high against the darkness. Behind them walk three unfamiliar figures, wrapped in heavy animal furs, stitched with bone fasteners, unlike anything your tribe wears. Strangers, real ones. The children stare openly. Honestly, the adults do too. The newcomers pause near the edge of the firelight, studying the cave chamber carefully. Snow clings to their fur wrappings, despite the underground tunnels suggesting another entrance exists, somewhere deeper below the hills. The first stranger appears elderly, but powerfully built, with thick gray hair braided tightly against his scalp. Beside him stands a younger woman, carrying a small child wrapped beneath layered hides. The third figure, a broad-shouldered hunter, grips a stone axe while watching the tribe cautiously. Nobody speaks immediately. The silence feels fragile. Then, the traveler beside your fire suddenly says a word in their language. Recognition flashes instantly across the strangers' faces. The old hunter lowers his weapon slightly. Relief spreads through the chamber like warmth. Slowly, carefully, anthropologists believe prehistoric trade and cultural exchange likely occurred more often than once imagined, especially through wandering individuals carrying tools, stories, and survival knowledge between distant groups. The traveler smiles faintly toward the newcomers. "Mountain people," he explains quietly to your tribe. The strangers approach the fires cautiously afterward. Smoke curls around unfamiliar faces, while children study one another across the glowing embers. Their clothing smells strongly of pine smoke and animal fat, mixed with the icy scent of snow-covered forests. The older hunter notices the painted cave walls immediately. He touches one faded handprint gently, then nods, as if greeting old memories. Historians still argue whether prehistoric cave sites sometimes served as seasonal meeting places for different human groups during migrations, rituals, or difficult winters. Looking around the chamber now, the idea feels deeply possible. The traveler begins translating slowly between the groups, while everyone settles near the fires. The mountain people traveled through underground tunnels after storms blocked higher passes farther east. Food grows scarce there now. Winter arrived early. The broad-shouldered hunter opens a leather bundle beside the flames. Inside rests a smoked fish. Several children gasp softly. Fish during winter feels almost magical. In exchange, your tribe offers dried roots and rabbit meat gathered before snowfall deepened across the valley. Trade begins awkwardly, but naturally, beside the firelight. Small things first. Always small things first. The older mountain hunter studies the clay ember container near the flames and smiles broadly. Then he reaches inside his own fur wrappings and removes something stranger still. A smooth black stone, glass-like, sharp enough to reflect firelight. Volcanic obsidian. The traveler exhales softly in admiration. Volcanic glass became highly valuable for prehistoric tools because its edges could become sharper than ordinary stone. Archaeologists have discovered obsidian carried astonishing distances across ancient trade routes, proving early humans exchanged materials over enormous regions long before cities existed. The old woman touches the stone carefully. Burning mountain, she murmurs. The mountain hunter nods proudly. Outside, snow falls steadily across the hidden valley, while warmth grows inside the cave chamber. More fires burn now. More voices. More movement. The darkness feels pushed farther away than ever before. Children from both groups begin playing cautiously beside the painted walls. One little girl presses her hand beside an ancient red handprint and laughs quietly when another child imitates her. Firelight dances across the cave around them, while smoke drifts upward through the ancient darkness. Human beings repeating themselves again. The traveler eventually speaks softly toward the gathered tribes. In hard winters, fire should not belong to one people. Nobody argues, because everyone remembers the night the flames almost died. The old woman studies the mountain strangers thoughtfully. Do your people carry fire too? The older hunter smiles. Then he opens another leather pouch carefully. Inside rests dried moss surrounding tiny sleeping embers, glowing red beneath layers of ash. Several tribe members laugh softly in amazement. Different people, same lessons. The cave grows warmer as evening deepens around the fires. Stories begin passing slowly between groups, through gestures, fragments of shared words, and patient translation from the traveler. You learn of frozen rivers farther north, of giant elk moving through eastern forests, of another tribe lost during storms near the burning mountain years earlier. History existed long before writing. It simply traveled through smoke and memory instead of books. Late into the evening, the mountain hunter points toward the painted mammoths along the wall, then toward the children sleeping near the flames. The meaning becomes clear even without language. The paintings matter because someone survived long enough to leave them. The fires matter because someone stayed awake protecting them. And the children matter because they will remember all of it after the old voices finally disappear. Outside the cave, snow continues covering the ancient world in silence. But inside, beside shared firelight beneath painted stone, humanity suddenly feels a little less alone against the darkness. Section 19. Winter settles fully across the valley within the next few days. Snow deepens between the hills until familiar paths disappear beneath smooth white drifts. The river below the cave slows beneath forming ice, while cold wind sweeps endlessly across the plains, carrying sharp crystal flakes against the rocks. Yet inside the cave, life grows warmer, not physically alone, humanly. The shared fires between both tribes now burn almost constantly beneath the painted walls. Smoke stains spread darker across the ceiling, while sleeping places expand deeper into the chamber. Voices fill the evenings where silence once ruled. Fear still exists, but loneliness fades. Anthropologists believe communal fires likely strengthened cooperation between prehistoric groups because warmth encouraged longer social contact, shared stories, and collective problem-solving during harsh climates. Civilization may simply be many frightened people deciding to survive together. The mountain people prove surprisingly skilled at winter living. They show your tribe how to line boots with dried moss for warmth and how to preserve fish beneath packed snow outside the cave entrance. In return, Karu demonstrates spear balancing techniques, while the old woman teaches careful ember wrapping using bark and ash. Knowledge moves constantly now, back and forth, like sparks carried between fires. One evening, while snowstorms howl across the valley outside, the broad-shouldered mountain hunter begins carving marks into soft cave clay beside the fire. Children gather immediately. You do too. The marks resemble simple animals at first. Deer, mammoths, running shapes beneath lines representing snowfall. Then he adds circles beside several figures. Fires, many fires. The traveler studies the markings thoughtfully. He counts winters, he explains softly. Historians still debate how prehistoric humans measured time before formal calendars emerged. Seasonal cycles, migrations, moon phases, and storytelling likely formed early systems for remembering years and important events. Memory always searches for shape. The broad-shouldered hunter points toward the children afterward, then toward the clay markings. The meaning feels obvious somehow. Remember this. Remember us. The old woman nods slowly beside the flames. We do. Outside the cave, the storms worsen each night. Wolves now howl regularly beyond the valley, while snow buries much of the surrounding woodland. Hunting grows difficult and dangerous. Several hunters return empty-handed after exhausting journeys through knee-deep drifts beneath freezing skies. Still, nobody panics anymore. The fire remains steady, reliable, protected constantly by many hands. You notice something important during these long winter evenings. No fire ever burns unattended now. Someone always watches the embers while others sleep. Children practice feeding coals carefully beneath supervision. Hunters returning from outside immediately check the warmth before removing snow-covered hides. The fire became responsibility itself, shared responsibility. Historians believe certain prehistoric groups may have maintained continuous flames for generations without ever allowing complete extinction. Some researchers speculate sacred or communal fires held symbolic importance far beyond practical warmth. Watching this tribe now, the idea feels inevitable. The traveler eventually says exactly what everyone already understands. Fire sleeps. He murmurs one evening beside the glowing coals. But humans must stay awake for it. The children repeat the phrase softly afterward, as though memorizing something sacred. Perhaps they are. One particularly cold night, the mountain woman begins singing quietly beside the flames while repairing torn fur wrappings. Her voice sounds low and rhythmic, blending strangely with the crackling fire and distant wind outside the cave. Nobody knows the words, yet everyone listens. Soon the old woman joins softly, using her own melody beneath the stranger's song. The rhythms overlap unevenly at first, before settling together beside the glowing embers. Two tribes, two histories, one fire. Anthropologists studying prehistoric music believe rhythm and vocal traditions likely played important roles in social bonding long before written language or formal instruments developed. Humans sang before they built cities, before kingdoms, before history itself. The cave feels ancient in a comforting way tonight. Smoke drifts lazily upward through darkness, while children sleep safely near the flames beneath layered hides. Shadows dance gently across painted mammoths and beading red handprints left by forgotten people thousands of years earlier. You suddenly realize something strange. This cave never truly belonged to one tribe, only to whoever carried fire here next. Outside, snow falls silently across the frozen valley. Inside, humanity continues. The broad-shouldered hunter eventually rises and walks toward the painted wall, carrying a piece of charred wood from the fire. Several adults glance upward curiously, while he kneels beside the ancient mammoth drawings. Then, fully respectfully, he adds something new, a small circle of black figures sitting around flames beneath falling snow. The cave grows silent. Nobody objects, because the painting already feels true. Historians still argue whether prehistoric cave art accumulated across generations through repeated visits from different groups over centuries. Some caves clearly changed over time, as Ginuumu images appeared beside older ones. Layers of memory, layers of survival. The old woman approaches the fresh drawing slowly afterward. Firelight reflects softly across her lined face, while snow wind whispers faintly beyond the cave entrance. Then she places her soot-darkened hand gently against the wall beside the new figures. Another handprint. New. Living. Children immediately rush forward, asking to do the same. Soon, small hands press beside ancient ones, all across the stone, while adults laugh softly around the fires. Smoke curls upward, carrying warmth and human voices through the vast underground darkness. And for the first time since the fire died back in the open valley weeks ago, you understand something deeply comforting. Human beings survived the ancient world, not because they feared darkness less, but because they kept gathering around the light together. Section 20. Winter slowly loosens its grip on the valley. Not suddenly. Never suddenly. The snow begins shrinking first along the dark stones near the cave entrance, where weak sunlight lingers longest each afternoon. Thin streams of meltwater trickle down the hillsides beneath pale skies, while distant birds cautiously return to the forests below. The world starts breathing again. Inside the cave, the fires still burn steadily beneath smoke-darkened ceilings and painted walls layered with ancient memory. Children wake beside warm embers instead of freezing darkness now. Hunters sharpen tools while speaking calmly near the flames. Even laughter echoes more freely through the chamber these days. The fire never sleeps anymore. Someone always watches it. The responsibility passed quietly from elder to hunter, from hunter to child, from stranger to tribe, until it became part of everyone equally, like breathing, like remembering. The traveler prepares to leave one morning shortly after the snow begins melting along the lower valley paths. His clay ember container rests beside him, carefully packed with ash, glowing coals, and dried fungus prepared for the long eastern journey back toward the burning mountain. Several children gather nearby immediately. They look heartbroken. Honestly, you feel something similar. The old woman sits beside the fire, watching the traveler wrap heavy furs around his shoulders. Smoke drifts softly between them, carrying familiar scents now deeply connected to survival itself. "You will return?" one child asks quietly. The traveler smiles faintly. "Maybe." Then he taps the ember container gently, but fire travels even when people do not. Simple words again, heavy ones. Historians still debate how ideas moved between prehistoric human groups scattered across enormous, dangerous landscapes. Yet tools, pigments, ornaments, and fire-making knowledge clearly spread somehow over generations. Humanity survived because strangers sometimes shared warmth. Outside the cave, the valley glows silver beneath early spring sunlight, reflecting against melting snow. Water drips steadily from rocks, while cold wind carries the rich smell of thawing earth for the first time in many weeks. The broad-shouldered mountain hunter prepares to leave as well alongside the woman and child who traveled through the underground tunnels earlier that winter. Their people wait somewhere eastward, beyond frozen ridges and volcanic stone. Before departing the mountain, child presses one final handprint beside the painted wall near the fire. A tiny shape, small fingers now spread wide. Living proof. The cave feels quieter after the mountain people disappear into the bright snowy hills, carrying their protected embers eastward. Yet their presence lingers everywhere somehow. In the repaired boots lined with moss, in the obsidian blades gleaming beside the fire, in the fresh paintings dark against the ancient walls, in the children repeating old lessons beside glowing coals. The tribe eventually leaves the cave too once winter weakens enough for safer travel across the plains. Bundles gather slowly near the entrance, while hunters scout the valley below for fresh animal tracks emerging through the thawing grasslands. Migration begins again. Movement never truly stops in this ancient world. The old woman carefully prepares several ember bundles before departure. Children watch closely while she layers warm ash around glowing coals, inside bark wrappings tied with hide strips. No mistakes now. Not after everything. Karoo shoulders a spear beside the entrance while flexing his healed arm carefully. The scar remains thick and pale beneath the skin, where hyena teeth nearly ended him during the storm. Survival leaves marks, always. Before leaving the cave, the tribe gathers one final time around the fire, beneath the painted mammoths, and countless handprints covering the walls. Ancient strangers, mountain people, children born during winter storms, generations pressed together through smoke and memory. The old woman feeds one last branch into the flames. Then she looks toward the children. What do we protect? The answer comes immediately now. The fire. She nods slowly. And what protects us? Nobody answers at first. Then the missing boy from the forest speaks softly beside the embers. Each other. The cave grows very still afterward. Outside sunlight spills warmly across the thawing valley, while smoke drifts upward through the entrance one final time. The tribe eventually turns toward the open world beyond the hills, carrying tools, hides, memories, and sleeping fire, wrapped carefully inside ash-filled bundles. The darkness still exists out there. Predators still hunt. Storms still gather beyond distant mountains. But humanity walks differently now. Not fearless, never fearless, just unwilling to face the night alone anymore. And as the valley slowly disappears behind you, beneath pale spring skies, the fires continue traveling forward in human hands toward futures nobody yet understands, toward stories still waiting beside unknown campfires, toward children not yet born, toward civilizations hidden impossibly far ahead beyond thousands of winters, all because somewhere long ago during one terrible freezing night, somebody refused to let the fire die. The evening grows softer now, the wind quieter. You walk beside the tribe through tall, thawing grass, while smoke drifts gently upward from the ember bundles, carried carefully against warm chests. Above you, stars slowly emerge once more across the endless prehistoric sky. Not frightening tonight, just distant. The world settles into calm sounds around you. Crackling fire, quiet footsteps, gentle breathing. Somewhere far away, water moves peacefully through melting snow beneath moonlight. The children grow sleepy during the long walk. One rests against her mother's shoulder, while another watches sparks rise from a traveling ember bundle, glowing softly through the darkness. The old woman walks slowly near the center of the tribe, still guarding the fire, still watching the night. But now others watch with her, and little by little, the ancient darkness feels less endless than before, because warmth survives, memory survives, people survive. The stars continue shining above the vast sleeping earth, while the tribe disappears quietly into the open plains, carrying its fragile moving light forward through history. And somewhere ahead beyond countless future nights, the fire will still be burning. End of script. Sleep well.